Chapter 28. The four of you will stay here for the time being. Tomorrow morning, I will personally report to my father. Regarding this matter, once my father has made a decision, we will immediately begin. Tai Butian said with a smile. Just a moment ago, he still had the aura of a heavenly sword, but with a smile, his entire temperament seemed to have changed. He was kind and gentle, approachable, and made people feel as if they were bathing in the spring breeze. He did not even need to use any special methods to win people's hearts, but this kind of calmness would make people want to die for him. Yes. Bao Kuang-lei's heart trembled. He could not help but raise his evaluation of this Tai Yun Tai by another level. Although this grand elder was young, he was not simple at all. In his life, no matter if it was young or old, there was no one who could compare to this person. No wonder he was hailed as the #1 genius of the lower three heavens, the only natural-born king. Before meeting Tai Butian, Bao Kuang-lei did not think much of this, saying, "In this world, what natural-born king?" It was just that he came from a good background, received better education than the average person, studied the arts of the emperor since childhood, and accumulated his aura over a long period of time. As for the #1 genius, was there a lack of geniuses in this world? But at this moment, he believed it. That kind of elegance in his bones, the majesty in his soul, and the natural demeanor of a king, made Bao Kuang-lei, a fierce person of the Jianghu, tremble in his soul. At this moment, the purple bamboo garden of Beyond the Heavens sect was in full swing. Beyond the Heavens sect, early morning. Tan Tan was lying on the ground in a Tai shape, panting heavily. He rolled his eyes and said, Chu Yang, I admit that you are more handsome than me, okay? You have been too ruthless these days, right? You have almost drilled me to death. These days, whenever Chu Yang got up to practice, he would drag Tan Tan along. Every time Tan Tan was half dead tired. After a few days, Tan Tan had reached the point where he would tremble in fear whenever he saw Chu Yang. Chu Yang was very precise every time. He knew exactly how long Tan Tan needed to practice to reach the limit of his body. Every time after practice, he would make sure that Tan Tan could not stand up with his own strength without harming his body. Now, every time Tan Tan saw him, it was like seeing a ghost. In the beginning, he was still bragging and narcissistic, but now he didn't even have the time to be narcissistic. Chu Yang took a deep breath, stopped practicing and stood up. In these 20 days, he hadn't slacked off at all in his cultivation. Currently, he had already raised his cultivation level to martial disciple. He was only one step away from becoming a martial warrior. Feeling the changes in his body, Chu Yang smiled. Only by becoming a martial warrior could one truly begin to temper one's body. Before becoming a martial warrior, if one were to forcefully temper their body, regardless of whether it was their bones or internal organs, they would be severely damaged due to excessive tempering. This principle should still be a misconception in the current lower three heavens, right? Therefore, there was a saying circulating in the lower three heavens, Zhang Qianqiu's rule, martial artist Jia Xiu. He was talking about this matter. It meant that people who practiced martial arts could not live past the age of 10. Although this sentence had the meaning of suppressing martial arts, and this saying was also somewhat arbitrary, every year there were many martial disciples who desperately cultivated in order to raise their cultivation level as soon as possible. However, due to excessive exhaustion, their physical strength was overdrawn, and their bodies could not bear it. Although their cultivation level had increased at that time, when they were about 50 years old, this drawback would be exposed. And once it was exposed, the body was basically destroyed, and there was no way to save it. The time when a martial artist's body suffered the greatest damage was when they were building their foundation as a martial disciple. Only one step away. And the cultivation condition of Calamity Sword's Heavenly Tribulation Divine Technique was to become a martial warrior. In fact, it wasn't just Calamity Sword. Even some of the techniques of the lower three heavens were clearly written on the title page. Those below the martial warrior level are not allowed to cultivate. With a move of his dantian, the new energy that Chu Yang had painstakingly cultivated in the afternoon was swallowed by Calamity Sword. After a while, it was spat out. Although the amount was much less, it was extremely pure. Although this kind of energy was not as pure as Xiantian energy, it was much purer and more condensed than Xiantian energy. It was a world of difference compared to ordinary acquired energy. These days, every time he took a step forward, he would feel Calamity Sword move inexplicably in his body. Over time, Chu Yang had become accustomed to it. The purple crystal jade essence hanging on his neck did not react. Regarding this purple crystal jade essence, Chu Yang was somewhat speechless. The first time he used this purple crystal jade essence to recover his physical strength, the Calamity Sword spirit in his dantian suddenly rushed up. Before Chu Yang could enjoy it, it suddenly cut off the connection. Chu Yang tried several times, but the Calamity Sword spirit cut him off. It clearly wanted him to rely on his own strength to cultivate, and would not let him borrow external forces. However, the Calamity Sword spirit did not care if he used it to recover his physical strength when facing an enemy. Just like when he dealt with Chu Ping, the Calamity Sword spirit did not react at all. But after the battle, he was not allowed to use it. In the face of such an impartial and overbearing supervisor, Chu Yang could only submit. The idea of using the purple crystal jade essence for cultivation was extinguished from his heart. Turning his head to look at Tan Tan's embarrassed appearance, Chu Yang almost laughed out loud. Helplessly he said, "Okay, you should rest." When Tan Tan heard these words, it was as if the Emperor's grace was vast and mighty. He almost shed tears of gratitude. He got up with great difficulty and crawled to the side on all fours. Then he sighed comfortably. On the field, Chu Yang continued to practice his sword drawing and sheathing of the sword. It was a simple and boring movement. But Chu Yang practiced it with the greatest passion and full of concentration every time. The sun slowly rose from the east. Chu Yang's head and body were steaming hot. Beads of sweat dripped down from his head and fell to the ground. Tan Tan finally recovered. But he looked at Chu Yang's movements and slowly saw that he was in a trance. Chu Yang had been repeating the same movements. But Tan Tan found that Chu Yang was doing this movement hundreds of times. And it was different every time. It seemed as if he was adjusting it. It looked a little awkward at first. But it became smoother and smoother later on. In the end, it formed a light curtain. Drawing the sword, sheathing the sword, sheathing the sword. The cycle continued, and the voice gradually became softer. It wasn't obvious, but it did become softer little by little. "Chu Yang, your arm is swollen." Tan Tan looked at Chu Yang for a long time. Suddenly, he found that Chu Yang's elbow and shoulder were abnormally thick. He couldn't help but shout. Chu Yang's face remained unchanged. He was indifferent and expressionless. He continued to practice this movement. He said indifferently, "Is it swollen? It will go away as you practice." "Tan Tan, it's swollen. If you wait for it to go away, then it will be too late. But when you get used to this kind of strength, the swelling will go away. When the swelling goes away, then it will be time for you to improve." Tan Tan was stunned. He suddenly felt ashamed. He felt that he had recovered a lot of strength. He stood up and continued to practice. Meng Chao Ran stood quietly in the purple bamboo forest. Looking at the two martial brothers practicing, the corners of his mouth revealed a trace of gratification. The sound of groaning came from the room. It was Shi Qianshan suffering. He had been lying on the bed for 20 days. Chu Ping and the others were ruthless. That day, they broke Shi Qianshan's ribs and thighs. For at least 3 months, Shi Qianshan could not practice martial arts. For half a year, he could not use martial arts. But half a year later, the ranking competition of Beyond the Heavens sect was almost over. This injury was tantamount to destroying Shi Qianshan's future in Beyond the Heavens sect. The torment of the physical body could never be compared to the pain of the heart. Therefore, Shi Qianshan was filled with hatred. Strangely, he did not hate the people who hurt him, but he hated Chu Yang the most. In Shi Qianshan's heart, if it was not for Chu Yang, he would definitely have a meteoric rise. Chapter 29. Shi Qianshan's intuition was very accurate. His current miserable state was entirely caused by Chu Yang. During this period of time, Chu Yang took care of Shi Qianshan in every possible way. Every day he would come to report to Shi Qianshan. Eldest martial brother, how are you? I have broken through to the 5th level of martial disciple today. Eldest martial brother, I broke through to the 7th level today. I am now at the 7th level. These good news made Shi Qianshan feel like he was being pierced by thousands of arrows. His mood was extremely gloomy, and the recovery of his injuries was even slower. Even when his mood was extremely bad, his injuries showed signs of worsening. However, Shi Qianshan should not have hated Chu Yang, but also Meng Chao Ran and Tan Tan. He hated them to the bone. How could Chu Yang advance so quickly? It must be because Meng Chao Ran was biased. Master must have a miraculous elixir that could quickly increase a person's cultivation. After so many years, he did not give it to me, but gave it to Chu Yang. Thinking about this, Shi Qianshan's heart was burning with jealousy. In the end, he could not live under the same sky with Meng Chao Ran. After that day, although Meng Chao Ran's attitude was somewhat cold, he still took care of Shi Qianshan. Meng Chao Ran did not hesitate to use his martial power to connect Shi Qianshan's meridians, to relieve his pain, and to find elixirs to help him recover. However, Shi Qianshan's hatred for the house extended to its crow. He even hated his master, who had treated him with great kindness. He actually hated him so much that he gnashed his teeth. Therefore, Shi Qianshan wanted revenge. Outside Shi Qianshan's room, there was a small pond. It was only half the size of a room and about 10 feet deep. The spring water from the purple bamboo garden flowed through here, filling the pond, and then continued to flow downwards, forming a small stream. Therefore, the water in this pond was always clear, and the bottom could be seen. The water that Chu Yang and the others usually drank came from here. Now, Shi Qianshan was lying on the bed, trying his best to support his body. He quietly took out a paper bag from under the bed. Inside the bag was the soul-shattering powder. 5 kinds of strange poisons mixed together, colorless and tasteless. It was said that there was no cure. Putting it in the food, it was like a delicious condiment, stimulating people's appetite. Shi Qianshan's lips were trembling, and his fingers were also trembling. However, he still resolutely pulled over the candle at the head of the bed. His right hand slowly broke off a piece from the bottom. His face was sometimes red and sometimes pale, as if he was having an intense inner conflict. But his fingers didn't stop moving. He carefully wrapped the whole packet of soul-severing powder into a wax pill. Then he hid the wax ball under his blanket. Since I've already been destroyed, how can I let you have it easy? In any case, I'm heavily injured. No matter what, even if everyone here dies, they won't suspect me. If I'm the only one left in Purple Bamboo Garden, the sect master will definitely give me preferential treatment out of consideration for our past relationship. That way, I still have a chance. I don't need to rely on you, Meng Chao Ran. I can still get up. All of you are already dead. Right now, Shi Qianshan's heart was already on the verge of madness. The sun slowly rose and hung above their heads. Shi Qianshan tilted his head and listened. Then he clenched his teeth and flicked his finger. The wax ball flew out of his hand. He only heard a soft thump sound from outside. The wax ball had obviously fallen into the pond. Shi Qianshan let out a long sigh and slumped back onto the bed. His eyes flashed with guilt and shame. But what followed was an indescribable viciousness and madness. He clenched his teeth and tightly grasped the thin blanket on his body with his right hand. He used so much strength that he almost scratched a hole in the thin blanket. But he finally relaxed his body. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. Water is running water. If the poison is put in it, it will be washed away early. If it's too late, the poison won't have enough time to disperse. According to the usual lunch time, this time was just right. He calculated the time. After another quarter of an hour, he heard the sound of Tan Tan carrying a wooden bucket to fetch water. He hurriedly crawled back into the blanket, closed his eyes, and loudly groaned twice. After a long while, the sound of ding ding dang 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 could be heard. Tan Tan's strange humming sound could be heard. Then, a strong fragrance of food wafted out. Shi Qianshan silently and viciously laughed. Meng Chao Ran, Tan Tan, and Chu Yang sat around the table. Looking at the tempting fragrance of the food on the table, Tan Tan's pair of eyes looked at his master. He felt even more hungry. As soon as Meng Chao Ran opened his mouth, he would immediately start wolfing down the food. But Meng Chao Ran looked at the food and frowned. The color of the food was the same as usual. The fragrance was also very strong. But it seemed a little too fragrant. It was a little strange. He immediately felt that something was wrong. Meng Chao Ran pondered for a while. He just picked up the chopsticks but then slowly put them down. He turned his head to look at Chu Yang. He couldn't help but feel moved. Chu Yang also turned his head to look at the food. He had a thoughtful look. Meng Chao Ran couldn't help but feel a little surprised. He could feel it. This was the result of decades of Jianghu experience. Moreover, he had always been cautious. In addition, he had trained himself in countless life and death situations. Only then did he develop such a keen sense. If it was an ordinary person, how could they notice the unusual fragrance of the food? The more fragrant it was, the more they wanted to eat it. But how did Chu Yang notice it? He was only 10 years old. Moreover, he had never gone out before. How could he have such observation skills? Tan Tan, you cooked the food, right? Chu Yang calmly smiled and asked. Yes, you guys quickly eat. It's so fragrant. I can't help it. Tan Tan pitifully begged. Chu Yang thoughtfully looked at the rippling water outside. He turned his wrist and a mysterious crystal jade needle appeared in his hand. He poked it in the vegetable soup. The jade needle's tip suddenly changed color. It was a frightening blue. Tan Tan's face changed. He was about to cry out in alarm. Chu Yang didn't turn his head. It seemed that he had already expected his reaction. He reached out his hand and covered his mouth. His gaze was still fixed on the food. He said heavily, Tan Tan couldn't have poisoned it. Then it's the water. Meng Chao Ran's heart shook again. He had just thought of this. It was impossible for him to poison Tan Tan's food. Moreover, he had watched Tan Tan grow up. He had never even touched poison. So how could he have poisoned it? Meng Chao Ran took a deep breath. His chest heaved up and down. Suddenly, his face was filled with anger. He suddenly turned his head and looked in the direction of Shi Qianshan's room. I'll go. Chu Yang calmly said. What are you going to do? Meng Chao Ran's face was ugly. I'll make him satisfied. Chu Yang lightly said. Meng Chao Ran quietly lowered his eyes. He gently smiled and said, Then you go. He paused and said, Don't go too far. Give him a chance to explain. Maybe not. Although his voice was soft, it was full of bitterness and exhaustion. No matter how unfilial Shi Qianshan was, he was still a disciple that he had taught for 7 or 8 years. Chu Yang suggested that he would handle it. He fully understood Meng Chao Ran's feelings. Although Meng Chao Ran was angry for Shi Qianshan, he also felt gratified for Chu Yang's understanding. Chu Yang nodded. He took the food that he had prepared for Shi Qianshan and walked out. He walked into Shi Qianshan's room and said with a smile, Eldest martial brother, it's time to eat. Isn't it always Tan Tan who brings food? Why is it you today? Shi Qianshan looked at him with surprise. Tan Tan is so tired today that he can't get up. Chu Yang kindly smiled and said, We are martial brothers. Isn't it the same if Tan Tan and I come? Eldest senior brother has racked his brains to take care of us for so long. His feelings are deep. It's time for me to repay him. Shi Qianshan snorted and said, My appetite is not good today. I don't want to eat. Put it aside first. What a joke. He clearly knew that there was poison in the food. Moreover, he had personally poisoned it. How could he eat it? On the other side, Meng Chao Ran, who had been concentrating his martial power to listen, could not help but snort. He still felt that it was inconceivable. The disciple that he had taught for 7 or 8 years wanted to poison him. Therefore, although he knew that it was impossible, he still wanted Chu Yang to give Shi Qianshan a chance to explain. He still had hope. Now that he heard Shi Qianshan's words, he immediately gave up. Chu Yang smiled and said, How can you not eat? Humans are made of iron and rice is made of steel. Moreover, you are injured and need nourishment. Come quickly. Once you eat, everything will be fine. Shi Qianshan frowned and said with disgust, I said that I won't eat. Quickly get out. Why won't you eat? Could it be that there is poison inside? Chu Yang said sincerely, eldest martial brother, you and I have been martial brothers for so many years. Could it be that I would poison you? Quickly eat. Chapter 30. Shi Qianshan's face changed. Chu Yang's words had poked at his sore spot. He could not help but raise his head and look at Chu Yang. He asked, What do you mean? You'll understand what I mean after you eat. Chu Yang looked at him. His eyes gradually became cold. He said slowly, I want to see if the poison in this bowl of rice can kill people. To tell you the truth, I have always been curious about this. Shi Qianshan's heart sank. He forced a smile and said, What kind of joke is this? Chu Yang smiled mischievously and said, Isn't this joke fun? Then let's do something fun. Suddenly, he carried the bowl to the bed and sat on it. He sat on Shi Qianshan's broken thigh. Crack! The bone that was just about to heal was broken again. Shi Qianshan screamed in pain. His whole body convulsed and trembled. Sweat as big as soybeans appeared on his face. His body was curled up like a shrimp. Just as he was about to scream, a piece of cotton was stuffed into his mouth. It was unknown when Chu Yang had pulled it out of the quilt. Chu Yang's movements were swift and agile, without the slightest hesitation. He completed the task in an instant. Perhaps even an old convict who had been working in the government for decades would not be able to match his fluidity at this moment. Shi Qianshan's screams were forcibly blocked and turned into a whimper. He could not make a sound. He could only stare at Chu Yang with a pair of frightened eyes. He shook his head repeatedly and sweat fell like rain. Chu Yang held the bowl in one hand and did not move an inch. However, his other hand gripped Shi Qianshan's neck. He leaned over and looked at him coldly. He said in a deep voice, Shi Qianshan, I did not want to kill you so early. I have not vented enough. Unfortunately, what you have done today has crossed my bottom line. Shi Qianshan whimpered. His eyes were full of hatred and fear. He struggled with all his might, but it affected his wound. It was so painful that sweat poured out. Shi Qianshan, let's not talk about how you have treated me and Tan Tan for the past few years. 8 years ago, your entire family was robbed at the foot of Broken Cloud Mountain. Your entire family's lives were at the hands of the bandits, and it looked like they were about to lose their lives. Your own sister was also about to be raped by the bandits. It was Master who passed by there and saved your family's lives, as well as your sister's reputation. After that, your whole family knelt on the ground and begged. Master saw that your talent was not bad, so he took you in as a younger brother, taught you martial arts, and taught you knowledge. It's fine if you don't know how to repay kindness, but today, you actually poisoned Master and wanted to kill him? Are you still human? Chu Yang growled in a low voice. You are simply heartless and unscrupulous. Shi Qianshan's eyes revealed a look of shame, but he quickly hid it. He glared at Chu Yang fiercely, as if he wanted to eat him alive. He actually didn't repent at all. Suddenly, he coughed violently, and a stream of blood gushed up from his throat. The force of the coughing was so strong that the cotton ball in his mouth was flushed out. Fresh blood splattered onto the blanket in front of his chest. He stared at Chu Yang, but didn't cry out in pain. Chu Yang, don't pretend to be a hypocrite here. In front of me, it's useless. Your tricks, I have long since disdained to use them. Shi Qianshan's voice was low, and he coughed. Blood continued to flow from his mouth. He said hatefully, I am ungrateful, so what? I wanted to kill you all with poison, so what? I am ambitious, heartless, and unscrupulous, so what? Shi Qianshan gasped for breath, and his chest heaved up and down. If it weren't for you, Chu Yang, this time, how could I have broken my leg and be seriously injured? If it weren't for my broken leg, how could I have lost the opportunity to participate in the great competition of the peaks? If it weren't for losing this opportunity, how could my life be so gloomy? Everything is because of you, Chu Yang. You and I cannot live under the same sky. As for Master, Shi Qianshan sneered, and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. You think Meng Chao Ran has a good heart? Why did he save my family that year? Wasn't it because he liked my sister's beauty? If it weren't for my father's timely detection and immediately married my sister after returning home, I'm afraid she would have fallen into his hands. Don't look at his usual righteous appearance, he is actually a perverted scoundrel. Sometimes at night, he even calls Choo-Choo, Choo-Choo. Do you think I didn't hear it? Choo-Choo is my sister's nickname. That perverted scoundrel. He knew that he would not be spared today, and he actually spilled out all the viciousness in his heart to his heart's content. In the dining hall, Meng Chao Ran, who was listening to the commotion, suddenly trembled. His face turned purple, and with a th sound, the teacup in his hand was crushed. The broken pieces fell from his hand. Meng Chao Ran's beard suddenly stood up, and he fiercely exhaled. This breath shot out, and with a pew sound, it actually pierced a big hole in the thick wooden door. Ha! I said it. This old man, what great kindness. Ha! Shi Qianshan laughed crazily. Chu Yang roared, and his palm struck down. Suddenly, with a pew sound, a big hole appeared in the wall. Dust flew everywhere, and Meng Chao Ran entered through the hole and grabbed Chu Yang's wrist. He knew that Chu Yang would not be able to endure these words, and would definitely immediately attack, so he did not have time to enter through the door. Old man, what else do you have to say? When Shi Qianshan saw him enter, he instinctively shrank back, and then he actually fiercely shouted. Shi Qianshan's hand that was holding Chu Yang's wrist slowly lowered. He quickly took 2 deep breaths, and miraculously recovered his calmness. He looked at Shi Qianshan's eyes without any emotion, and slowly said, Shi Qianshan, today, I will expel you from the sect. Shi Qianshan laughed, and then coughed and said, Meng Chao Ran, do you think that at this time, Master Shi still cares about the identity of your little brother? Hey! Meng Chao Ran's eyes became cold, but his voice was still calm. He said in a deep voice, Shi Qianshan, your sister Shi Choo-Choo is indeed beautiful, but not to the extent that I, Meng Chao Ran, can't forget her. Shi Qianshan snorted and said mockingly, then why did you call my sister's name in your sleep? Are you crazy? Meng Chao Ran's eyes flashed with anger, but it was immediately replaced by sadness. I did not call your sister. I am 48 years old this year. 8 years ago, I was 40 years old. Your sister was only 15. Ha! Although she is beautiful, I, Meng Chao Ran, am not that despicable. He smiled bitterly and said, I called Choo-Choo, not Choo-Choo. Choo-Choo. Yi Chu-Chin is my lover, my wife. We have been separated for 20 years already. I miss her all the time. Meng Chao Ran coldly said, that year I saved your whole family. One of the reasons was that your sister's name and there was a word in her name that had the same pronunciation. Otherwise, in Jianghu, where the weak are prey to the strong, I, Meng Chao Ran, would not meddle in other people's business. Shi Qianshan made a sound in his throat and was unable to say anything. He finally understood. No wonder sometimes when Master called my sister's name, his accent was so strange. So he was not calling her. Suddenly, it was too late for regrets. For a moment, his intestines turned green. He had suspected for so many years. He had hated for so long. It turned out that it was his own wishful thinking. Meng Chao Ran took a deep breath and said indifferently, the reason why I had to make it clear was not for you. It was also to send you on your way. There seemed to be some contradiction in these words, but Chu Yang knew that Meng Chao Ran's explanation was meant for him. He did not want his own brother to misunderstand him. He did not want his own sacred feelings to be misunderstood. He needed someone to be a witness. Even though it had been so many years, Meng Chao Ran's heart still did not allow any blasphemy. This time, Shi Qianshan had touched Meng Chao Ran's absolute bottom line. Shi Qianshan's face changed. He struggled and shouted, Master, I was wrong. I was confused. I deserve to die. Please forgive me this time. As he shouted, tears flowed down his face. It's too late. You must know that in life, some things can be wrong, but some things cannot be wrong. Once you make a mistake, you will pay with your life. Meng Chao Ran coldly shook his head. He slowly stretched out his hand. His eyes flashed with a trace of sadness, but he did not care about Shi Qianshan's begging. Chapter 31. Chu Yang's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He rushed forward and slapped his palm on Shi Qianshan's chest. Pa! Shi Qianshan's chest bones were shattered. His body jerked and his eyes bulged out. Blood started to flow out of his mouth and nose. He fell backward and stopped breathing. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk did. Meng Ran looked at him and understood what he meant. He could not help but sigh. Master, it's better for younger brother to do it. He has bullied us for a long time. Today is a good time to vent. Chu Yang said calmly. Meng Ran looked at Dong Xuebing and patted his shoulder. But in the end she did not say anything and walked out. Personally killing the younger brother that he had raised for 8 years, with Meng Ran's character, after killing him, he would probably hold a grudge. But it was different when Chu Yang did it. Although he died in front of him, he was not the one who killed him. That kind of feeling would be much lighter. How could Meng Ran not understand Chu Yang's intention? Chu Yang also sighed. Looking at Shi Qianshan's corpse, he could not help but hatefully say, "Dying so quickly is really too easy for you." These words were not wrong. If Meng Ran did not suddenly come, with Chu Yang's methods and the accumulated hatred of 2 lives, he would definitely make Shi Qianshan beg for death. Chu Yang also finally understood why Meng Ran named himself Chu Yang. First, it was because of the Chu character on the jade pendant. Second, it was because of the Chu character in Yi Chu Chen's name. Chu Yang, does it not mean the morning sun? And Chu Chen, does it not have the same meaning as my name? And Tan Tan's Tan character, does it not mean the appearance of the Tan flower? Was that Meng Ran lamenting the shortness of his love? Chu Yang suddenly understood how bitter his master's heart was. The most painful thing in life is separation in life and death. And in these 4 words, separation in life is in front. This means that separation in life is much more painful than separation in death. Separation in death is painful for a while. But separation in life is painful for a lifetime. As long as one is alive, this pain and torment will never end. Yi Chu Chen. Chu Yang silently muttered. Then he calmly looked in the direction that Meng Ran had gone. He then said in his heart, "Master, I will remember this name." Chu Yang turned his head and looked at Shi Qianshan's corpse. His eyes were wide open. Chu Yang was silent for a long time. His heart was filled with complicated emotions. He finally realized that he had truly changed the course of his life. In his previous life, Shi Qianshan should have lived for 4 years. However, in less than a month after his rebirth, Shi Qianshan died in his own hands. Chu Yang was silent for a while. Then he wrapped the corpse in a quilt and slowly walked out. However, she was surprised to find that Tan Tan had prepared a table of dishes during this period of time. And the dishes were placed on the table. They were steaming hot. What was even more surprising was that Meng Ran didn't disappear either. He just sat there quietly as if waiting for him. Everything was as it had always been. When Tan Tan saw Chu Yang come in, his eyebrows twitched. He rubbed his hands and asked with some apprehension, "That eldest martial brother, Shi Qianshan? Did I killed him?" Chu Yang said casually and then sat down. Tan Tan nodded and lowered his head. He suddenly felt that he didn't have anything to eat. Just now, he also heard Shi Qianshan's words. In his heart, he also felt that Shi Qianshan deserved to die. However, he didn't know why, but there was still a faint sadness in his heart. After all, they had been together for so many years. And before this, Tan Tan had never seen Shi Qianshan's true colors. Meng Ran was silent for a while. He picked up his chopsticks and said, "Let's eat." His expression was calm as if this matter had never happened. This purple bamboo garden had never had a person named Shi Qianshan. The 3 of them were silent. The atmosphere at the banquet was heavy to the extreme. Chu Yang also didn't say anything. Master Meng Ran didn't need any consolation at this time. Even if he felt that it wasn't worth it, he would be able to adjust himself in a few days. However, it was Shi Qianshan's last words that evoked Meng Ran's emotional pain. This emotional turmoil in his heart would probably last for a long time. After Meng Ran finished eating, he saw that Chu Yang was also wolfing down his food. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and said, "Chu Yang, this is your first time killing someone, right? If I remember correctly, you haven't even killed a single animal before." Chu Yang was startled and said, "Yes." Only then did he remember that he was too calm after killing someone. In the eyes of Meng Ran, who was experienced in Jianghu, this was undoubtedly a very surprising matter. Even though he was a martial artist, no matter how evil he was, when he killed someone for the first time, there would always be some abnormality. But now, Chu Yang's first time killing someone was his eldest martial brother whom he had lived with for 8 years. Unexpectedly, he didn't even have any effect on his food. How could this not be strange? Your mentality is like that of a natural killer. Meng Ran smiled faintly and said. After saying this, he suddenly remembered Wu Yunliang's suggestion. In his heart, he approved of the possibility of Chu Yang doing that dangerous mission. With this kind of calmness, even to the point of being callous, to do that mission, there was absolutely no need to worry about being exposed. However, Meng Ran was still somewhat uneasy. His mood was very conflicted. That was an opportunity, but at the same time, it was also a path of death. A natural killer. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. In his heart, he thought, even though this is the first time I killed someone in this life, in my previous life, I had already killed tens of thousands of people. How could I not be calm? I was already numb. Killing a person was not as effective as killing a dog. Shi Qianshan deserved to die. Little brother killing him was a matter of course. There was no pressure, and it was very satisfying. Chu Yang said seriously. Meng Ran looked at him and suddenly smiled faintly. He said, "Very good," and no longer spoke. 3 days quickly passed. On this night, Chu Yang sat alone in the depths of the purple bamboo forest, feeling the energy of heaven and earth. He had a premonition that today, he should be able to break through to martial warrior. Since the day he killed Shi Qianshan, the ruthlessness in his heart had been aroused. Chu Yang had always felt his dantian's qi fluctuating violently. It was as if a bloodthirsty emotion was awakening, struggling and roaring. This was the ruthlessness that was left in his soul when he practiced the emotionless sword path in his previous life. Chu Yang spent a lot of effort to suppress this emotion and continued to cultivate calmly. However, from that moment on, the true energy in his body suddenly surged. It was as if he was about to break through some shackles. Chu Yang narrowed his eyes and controlled the energy whirlpool in his dantian. The Calamity Sword seemed to have become the core. The energy whirlpool circled around the Calamity Sword in his dantian. Like lightning, it rushed out of his dantian and rushed into his meridians. With a sharp energy, it passed through his meridians. It gradually went up. After it passed through his meridians, it had already formed a vast energy flow. Chu Yang's mind moved, and the energy flow broke away from the circulation channel of a martial disciple. It brazenly continued to rush up to the bottleneck of a martial warrior. Boom! Chu Yang only felt a sudden thunderous sound in his body. His body shook violently, and with a puff, he spat out a mouthful of blood. 2 streaks of blood came out of his nostrils. His face was flushed red. However, the vast energy flow had already broken through the bottleneck. It charged forward little by little in the newly opened meridians. Chu Yang controlled it with his mind. After breaking through, it was the first time he circulated his martial power through the new meridians. He must be careful, otherwise there would be damage. This damage was invisible, but it could restrict a person's future achievements. It was as if he was crossing a wooden bridge. After guiding the energy flow through one cycle, Chu Yang was already sweating profusely. However, he did not relax and continued to circulate. 1 cycle, 2 cycles, 1 cycle. After the cycle was completed, Chu Yang suddenly exhaled. He felt that there was no strength in his body, but his whole body felt as comfortable as if he was immersed in warm water. The breath he exhaled, even in the pitch-black darkness of the night, flashed in front of him, and then dissipated into the air. In a hidden corner of the purple bamboo forest, Meng Ran stood motionless. His body was already covered with frost marks, and he was concentrating on protecting his younger brother. The moment Chu Yang broke through, Meng Ran also let out a long sigh of relief. He finally succeeded. Chu Yang's path of cultivation had taken another step forward. Chapter 32. Chu Yang only broke through to martial warrior. How could he force out the impurities in his meridians? What kind of monstrous disciple did I get? Meng Chao Ran was completely stunned. To be able to shock the usually carefree Meng Chao Ran to such an extent, this was definitely the first time in Beyond the Heavens sect. If Wu Yunliang and the others knew about this, their eyeballs would probably fall to the ground. Normally, when a martial warrior breaks through, they force out the impurities in their body. These impurities are acquired and are called body transformation. Martial warriors, from level 1 to peak martial warrior, basically remove the impurities on the surface of the body. After that is martial masters. Martial masters also force out the impurities in their body step by step, making their body more suitable for cultivation. Martial masters force out the impurities in their body, including the 5 viscera. These are also acquired impurities. This step is called body transformation. After that, when a martial great master breaks through, the impurities in their meridians are also acquired. It was only at this stage that he could be considered to have reached the stage of cultivation. This step is called meridian cleansing. Above martial great master, when a revered martial artist cultivates, it is time to force out the impurities in the deepest part of the body. This step is called meridian cleansing. Meridian cleansing is also the last step of refining the body. Now, Chu Yang had only broken through to martial warrior, but he had already reached the meridian cleansing stage. How could Meng Chao Ran not be shocked? It must be known that the current Meng Chao Ran was only at the late stage of meridian cleansing. Chu Yang often let out a sigh of relief. He had finally broken through to martial warrior. In other words, as long as he obtained the first fragment of Tribulation Sword, he could immediately cultivate Tribulation Divine Technique. Meng Chao Ran was surprised, but Chu Yang was not surprised at all. Every morning, he persisted in doing the same set of movements, constantly removing the impurities in his body. The impurities on the surface of his body, muscles, and bones had already been removed. These were the marvelous movements of Tribulation Sword. They were the secrets of the human body. Although it was only one movement, it allowed the entire body to move from inside to outside at the same time. At the same time, it created a pressure several times stronger, removing the impurities. It was just this set of seemingly ordinary movements, but it was hard to find even with tens of thousands of gold. It was a martial artist's treasure. Chu Yang stood up. His feet were nailed to the ground as if they were nailed to the ground. His upper body slowly leaned back. His waist seemed to have been broken. His head was bent all the way between his legs. Then his hands reached under his crotch and grabbed his chin. Then he exerted his strength, and his body suddenly bounced up from the ground in the shape of a round ball. It was spinning in the air. Meng Charan noticed that while he was spinning in the air, every part of his body was still moving in this position. From his neck to his toes, the sound of joints cracking could be heard, one after another. Meng Chao Ran was shocked. Although he didn't know the effect of this action, he knew that it was extremely difficult. If it were him, he definitely wouldn't be able to do it the first time. Chu Yang spun 7 or 8 times in the air before landing on the ground. He rolled back and forth on the ground in a circle. Then, his body suddenly stretched out like a chick breaking out of an eggshell. The sound of the joints in his body became even more intense. Then he slowly stood up. His body was in a posture that was almost like a toddler learning to walk. When he stood up, his legs trembled no less than 1,000 times. Every tremble was accompanied by a crisp sound from the depths of his bones. In the end, he steadied his body. The sound of the joints in his body weakened, but his 2 arms slowly stretched out in a strange position. Another burst of cracking sounds came from his arms. Pa pa pa, Meng Chaoran was almost stunned. He finally understood the meaning of this set of movements. But when he thought about it, he was horrified. This set of movements was clearly the trajectory of life. Every movement seemed strange and incomprehensible, but they were all full of traces of the great Tao. From nothing to something, becoming an egg, gestating, breaking out of the shell, standing up, this was the trajectory of life belonging to the birds. Chu Yang made 4 movements, and then stopped. This was also a set of movements contained in the Calamity Sword. Only after entering the martial warrior realm could he practice this set of movements. If he practiced this set of movements as a martial disciple, he was afraid that he would break all the bones in his body. The pain he had to endure to practice this set of movements was not much lighter than breaking bones. Moreover, it was a continuous pain that penetrated into the bone marrow. But from beginning to end, Chu Yang did not even make a sound. If he made a sound, he would lose his vitality, and the effect would be greatly reduced. After his rebirth, Chu Yang had already made up his mind. Either he did not do it, or he did it to the best of his ability. He took a deep breath. At this time, the sweat on his body surged out violently. On the ground, it was quickly soaking through at a speed visible to the naked eye. Master, these 4 movements are called the limitless Tao of heaven and earth. There are too many mysteries in it, and I don't understand them fully. Master, please correct me. Chu Yang did not turn his head and said lightly. He knew that his master must be protecting him. Although he did not notice, Meng Chaoran was definitely there. Because it was only 4 years later in his previous life that he found out that every time the 3 of them broke through, although Meng Chaoran seemed indifferent on the surface, he was even more nervous than them. Every time, he had to be fully alert to secretly protect them. When they broke through, they only needed to work hard, but their master had to suffer in secret for several days. But Meng Chaoran never said anything. He was a person who only did and did not say anything. By the time Chu Yang understood his master's good intentions, it was already too late. In this life, how could he miss it? Meng Chaoran chuckled and walked out of the purple bamboo forest. He asked, "How did you know I was here?" Chu Yang smiled. His eyes shone with deep emotion. He said, "When we broke through, Master was not here. When we were cultivating, we were never disturbed. When we were breaking through, there wasn't even a mosquito by our side. It was absolutely quiet, not to mention other snakes, insects, and rats. In this purple bamboo forest that is filled with these things, isn't it strange?" Meng Chaoran smiled with gratification. He said, "You worked hard. Breaking through is your own ability. I was just secretly watching." Meng Chaoran did not say anything, but his heart was moved. He knew that Chu Yang's set of movements were deliberately done for him to see. It was so that he could also practice and improve his ability to protect himself. This set of movements was full of traces of the great Tao. It was absolutely beneficial for him to comprehend martial arts. He did not say anything, but his heart secretly remembered it. This set of movements was absolutely precious. He really did not know where Chu Yang learned it. But Meng Chaoran did not ask. Everyone had their own secrets. If Chu Yang did not want to take the initiative to say it, he would not ask. He respected his disciple's privacy. Chu Yang is my disciple. Knowing this is enough. Meng Chaoran stood for a while and went back. How could he not know that Chu Yang was on the verge of breaking through? He had been observing Chu Yang's movements every day for several days. He was mentally exhausted. But Chu Yang had just broken through, so he did not feel sleepy. It was late at night. Chu Yang hugged his knees and sat alone on the peak of the mountain. He looked at the dark night and his heart was in turmoil. "Jianghu, I am already a martial warrior. Soon, I will be able to cultivate to the tribulation level and have the power to protect you. I will not let you suffer any harm. Where are you now? The Jianghu now is only 10 years old, right?" As Chu Yang thought, he could not help but smile gently. "I wonder how Jianghu looks like now. Is she still a little girl? With a ponytail?" In his previous life, he met Mo Jianghu after the new year. At that time, Mo Jianghu was 10 years old. He was 25 years old. Thinking of Mo Jianghu at that time, Chu Yang's mind wandered. He still remembered that Mo Jianghu also liked purple bamboo. And because of the warmth of his childhood, He always chose a place to cultivate in seclusion. He would always find a patch of purple bamboo. So, it was at Nirvana? In the purple bamboo forest on the heavenly mist peak, he met Emo Qingwu for the first time. And finally, Emo Qingwu was attacked near the purple bamboo forest on the heavenly mist peak. Inside, there were a few bamboo houses that Emo Qingwu built herself. There were a few young bamboos. Emo Qingwu carefully planted them on the path to welcome him. He remembered that Emo Qingwu had said at that time, "Chu Yang, if I die one day, please burn my body into ashes and scatter them on this path. Plant my heart and soul on this path, just so that when you walk from here, you can step on me. I would rather let you step on everything I have, even if you are not here to see me, but just to see these purple bamboos. But please let me feel that you are here, that will be enough." Qingwu, Qingwu, Chu Yang's heart ached as he called out to her. He smiled gently, his eyes full of anticipation. The first one has been sent to sleep. Brothers and sisters who have tickets, throw a few tickets. *G. Chapter 33. As the night deepened, it was nearing the third night watch period. Chu Yang sat like a rock, deep in thought. His sleeves gently fluttered in the night wind, but he did not move an inch. The fourth night watch period arrived. Heaven and earth suddenly fell into the deepest darkness. Chu Yang was about to get up and return to his room when he suddenly felt something strange. His eyes suddenly became sharp as he looked towards the left side of the mountain road. On the left side was a road that led to beyond the heavens sect. It diverged from another mountain range and was very hidden. Under Chu Yang's gaze, a few shadows suddenly appeared at the bottom of the cliff. They were as fast as the wind and disappeared like ghosts in the dark night. The direction they disappeared in was actually the direction of beyond the heavens sect. Chu Yang's eyes narrowed. The fourth night watch period was the best time for night walkers to move. Moreover, the darkest time was less than half an hour. These people had clearly been hiding here for a long time, but they had to wait until now to act. They definitely did not have good intentions. Thinking of Meng Rant's words about protecting beyond the heavens sect, Chu Yang's eyes became serious. He suddenly got up and rushed down the cliff like a meteor. Using the cliff wall as support, he reached the bottom. Then, using the mountain rocks and trees as cover, he quickly chased after the three people. Although he was only a first-grade martial warrior, he was not the least bit afraid. Even if he was no match for them, he was still confident that he could escape. If these people really had bad intentions, Chu Yang felt that he was quite competent in causing trouble. He chased after them for a few miles. Chu Yang's movements were light and graceful, seemingly slow but actually fast. If there was an expert watching from the side, he would definitely be shocked. Every place he landed was an absolute blind spot. As he flew, he constantly used objects to cover his body. He seemed to be looking for temporary cover, but every time, it was absolutely flawless. His body was floating a few feet away, but his eyes were always looking for cover within a few feet of him. He had already made a perfect plan. Chu Yang continued to move forward. After chasing for 5 miles, he could already see the mountain gate of Beyond the Heavens sect in the distance. Chu Yang suddenly felt something and immediately stopped. His body flashed and he was already in the shadows. Then, he laid his body flat on the mountain rock and moved forward. Although it was a little slow, there was absolutely no sound coming from him. The three shadows were waiting quietly in a valley at the corner of the mountain. Not far in front of them was the mountain gate of Beyond the Heavens sect. Over there were younger brothers who were on duty day and night. Moreover, there were quite a few of them. Each mountain peak sent out one person to supervise and restrict each other, as well as to keep each other company. Other than the purple bamboo garden, the other peaks of Beyond the Heavens sect were all within this mountain gate. These people obviously didn't dare to force their way in. Although they were not afraid of these gatekeepers with their strength, they would still alert the enemy. It seemed like they were waiting, or were they going to meet here? Chu Yang thought to himself. Then he slowly moved forward another 30 feet. He was now less than 100 feet away from those three people. The three of them were all black turban sex G faces. They were carefully hiding behind a large rock. Chu Yang looked at the place where they were hiding and couldn't help but sigh in admiration. These 3 people seemed to be Jianghu veterans. The place they chose to hide in was a blind spot on 3 sides. Moreover, this was the only side where there were 2 exits. One of the exits was relatively hidden. In other words, even if there was an accident, they could escape quickly and not be caught by the enemy. Chu Yang held his breath. His body was like a rock as he quietly waited. His patience and confidence could be compared to anyone in the world. Time slowly slipped away. Among the 3 people, a slightly thin figure seemed to be somewhat impatient. He slightly adjusted his posture and whispered, "What's going on? Didn't we agree on this time? Why hasn't that damned guy come yet? Don't be impatient." Another black-clothed man cautiously looked around and whispered a warning. Then he raised his head and looked around. He suspiciously said, "Why do I feel like there's movement?" Hearing this, the other 2 also became alert. They pricked up their ears and looked around. Chu Yang's breathing rate remained the same. He treated their words as farts. Motionless. This was a kind of reaction. It was like a person walking alone at night. If someone was following behind him, he would have this kind of reaction even if he didn't turn his head. Not to mention martial artists, even ordinary people had this kind of reaction ability. But if he turned his head and didn't find anything, he would just treat it as an illusion. Sure enough, after the 3 people looked around, they all relaxed. The black-clothed man who said there was movement laughed self-deprecatingly and said, "I was being paranoid. It's always right to be cautious." The other 2 whispered. At this moment, there was a movement from the mountain gate. A voice shouted, "Who is it?" A steady and low voice said, "It's me." "Oh, it's second martial uncle. I've been disrespectful." Is second martial uncle going to practice martial arts? Yes, this is the best time to practice martial arts. You people must also remember that hard work can make up for your lack of talent. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth is the thickest in the morning. It's the best time to practice martial arts. Yes, we will follow second martial uncle's teachings. A black shadow slowly walked over. Behind him, the disciple who was guarding the gate was still praising, "Second martial uncle is worthy of being a big figure in our sect. His martial arts are high, but he's easy to approach. He's also very diligent. Every day at this time, he comes out to practice. This perseverance is really amazing. If it were me, I wouldn't be able to do it." Another voice said, "That's right. What kind of person is second martial uncle? How can you compare to him?" Chu Yang's heart shook. This person was second martial uncle Li Jinsong, Li Jian's father, the master of Locking Cloud's Peak of Beyond the Heavens sect, the second most important person. Li Jinsong was dressed in martial arts clothes, carrying a long sword on his back. He looked like he was out to practice swordsmanship. He leisurely went out of the mountain gate. With a long body, he drew a beautiful arc. Behind him, there was another sound. Li Jinsong flew a few times and came to the corner. He turned a few more times and walked to the back of the huge rock. It seemed that they had contacted each other more than once or twice. Chu Yang thought to himself. In addition, the disciple who was guarding the gate said, "Every day at this time, he comes out to practice martial arts." It was enough to show that Li Jinsong had done a lot of things in secret. "Why did you come so late? Is there any news?" The skinny man asked impatiently in a low voice. "Am I late?" Li Jinsong snorted. It was obvious that he was dissatisfied with this question. He said, "Did you bring the things?" "The things are not urgent." The other person quickly tried to smooth things over. He said, "Brother Li, quickly tell us about the recent changes in the situation." Li Jinsong snorted and lowered his voice. "The situation is a bit strange. I want to ask, besides you, is there anyone else who has designs on Beyond the Heavens sect?" The 3 men in black were also startled. They looked at each other and said, "This is not clear." However, Beyond the Heavens sect is in a precarious situation right now. There are many people who have designs on it. Li Jinsong made an "oh" sound and said, "Just a while ago, Wu Yunliang sent old Violet Lei to take 2 of his sect's most outstanding disciples and his daughter to Iron Cloud Nation." Ironcloud Nation? The three asked at the same time. Yes, and this trip was very secretive. But as far as I know, the four of them were intercepted more than once on the way. Obviously, someone did not want them to go. Moreover, these people are very well informed. Li Jinsong said calmly. Behind the rock, Chu Yang's heart shook. It seems that Li Jinsong was not the only spy. What is the purpose of going to Ironcloud Nation? The three men obviously did not care about the safety of Bao Kuang Lei and the others. They only wanted to know the reason. I don't know. Li Jinsong frowned and said, but, no matter what, they went to Ironcloud. For us, half of our goal has been achieved. Yes, Beyond the Heavens sect is within Great Zhao's borders. Wu Yunliang actually dared to send people to collude with Ironcloud. He really has guts. One of the men in black said gloomily. Is this the only news? Is it worth it for us to come all the way here? Brotherly, this is a bit too much. The other man in black had a mask on his face, but from his voice, one could hear that he was smiling insincerely. Of course not. It's just that you promised something. It's time to fulfill it. Li Jinsong suppressed his anger and said, you are from the imperial court and the military. You will not go back on your promises. Moreover, we have secretly pressured Wu Yunliang to side with Ironcloud. Even though the final decision has not been made, it is the same as saying that my mission has been accomplished. Secretly, Chu Yang was startled. The imperial court and the military? Beyond the Heavens sect is only a sect. What does it have to do with the imperial court and the military? And this imperial court is obviously the imperial court of Great Zhao. Chu Yang faintly felt that a great conspiracy was in progress. Perhaps the destruction of Beyond the Heavens sect in his previous life had a lot to do with this. Chapter 34. Brotherly, this is not what Prime Minister Diwu told you. The man in black, who was obviously the leader, laughed and said, we support you in defeating Wu Yunliang and eliminating all dissidents. You are in sole control of Beyond the Heavens sect. You will be listed as a sect of the imperial court. Brother Li's disciples can enter the imperial court as officials and bring honor to their ancestors. He laughed in a low voice. With such great benefits, I am afraid that even the Heavenly Tao Union's Master Xian Yuan would be tempted. And you think that by providing one or two pieces of information, you can exchange it for a lifetime of glory and wealth? Li Jinsong was furious. He shouted in a low voice, even the lives of my family are in your hands. How can you talk about glory and wealth? The man in black said, but Brother Li, the thing you want. You should know how important it is. Li Jinsong snorted and said, if worst comes to worst, I will go to Shangjing and find Prime Minister Diwu. I will just put this matter aside for a while. His tone was unusually decisive. The man in black pondered for a while and finally softened. Fine, Brother Li, I won't hide it from you. The 1,000-year-old crystal spirit mushroom you want is very difficult to find. The Prime Minister has already sent out 18 teams to look for it. Once it is found, it will be delivered to you immediately. He laughed and said, the Prime Minister knows that this is what you are most anxious about, right? Brother Li, you are really a sentimental person. But this kind of treasure can only be found by chance. Brother Li, you cannot be impatient. Li Jinsong snorted and said angrily, I can wait. I can even wait for 100 years. But my wife cannot wait. She is waiting for this thing to save her life. Of course. So even though Prime Minister Diwu did not let us bring the 1,000-year-old crystal spirit mushroom, he did let us bring the 3 lives pill. The man in black laughed and said, 3 pills. Li Jinsong suddenly raised his head. Really? Not only him, even Chu Yang, who was eavesdropping on the side, suddenly felt his heart skip a beat. 3 lives pill. 1,000-year-old crystal spirit mushroom. These were all things that could only be found by chance. What did Li Jinsong want? The 3 lives pill was not a medicinal pill. Instead, it was a strange kind of fruit. The plant of this fruit only sprouted in the first season and withered in 10 years. After another 20 years, it would sprout and branch again. After 50 years, it would become a small tree. It withered and rotted once again. Another 50 years later, it sprouted for the third time. After 200 years, it grew into a mature plant. It bloomed for one season, and the flowers were extremely poisonous. Then it bore this kind of fruit. It was the 3 lives pill. After the fruit ripened, it became the size of an apricot. The plant immediately withered and never relapsed again. 3 times, 330 years, only one fruit was born. One could imagine how precious this fruit was. The effects were even better. It could cure chronic illnesses, cure terminal illnesses, heal serious injuries, cultivate one's vitality, and increase one's lifespan. As for the 1,000-year crystal Ganoderma, it was a legendary item. It was one of the most miraculous medicines in the world. Its specific effects were enough to bring the dead back to life. However, Chu Yang didn't know its specific effects. However, both of these miraculous medicines were related to curing illnesses. Could it be that Li Jinsong's wife is sick? This Prime Minister Diwu was actually so generous, taking out 3 Sansheng Dan for Li Jinsong at once. These 3 Sansheng Dan are enough to protect your wife for 3 years. The man in black took out a black jade box and said, Prime Minister Diwu told me to tell you that if you can't find the crystal Ganoderma after 3 years, he can only give you other compensation. He said with a heavy tone, Prime Minister Diwu clearly told me not to deceive you about this matter. The Prime Minister said that although we are working together for each other's benefit, being honest with each other is the most important thing. These are the words of the Prime Minister himself. Li Jinsong lowered his head and was silent for a while. Then he said in a low voice, Thank you for your honesty. Li Jinsong understands. He lowered his head, and the sky was dark. Chu Yang couldn't see his expression, but behind the big rock, Chu Yang sneered in his heart. This Prime Minister Diwu's words were pleasant to hear, but from Li Jinsong's words, even the lives of my family are in your hands. What glory and splendor are you talking about? It was clear. Li Jinsong was blinded by greed, but he didn't do this willingly. He was under a certain degree of coercion. Coercing his people to talk about honesty? If Li Jinsong really believed it, then he would be the biggest fool in the world. The Sansheng Dan is extremely precious. You must keep it well. Normally, put it in this black jade box. Do not open it unless you need to use it. You must know that every time you open it, the spiritual energy of the Sansheng Dan will decrease. The man in black solemnly said, This matter in Iron Cloud, we brothers must report it to Prime Minister Diwu as soon as possible. If the Prime Minister knows, he will make arrangements. Brotherly, we will take our leave. Li Jinsong clasped his hands and said, I won't see you out. He was already holding the black jade box tightly in his arms. The 3 men in black had been gone for a long time. Li Jinsong was still standing in the same place. After a long time, he sighed and walked back with the black jade box. Not long after, his figure disappeared into the darkness. Chu Yang was still hiding behind the big rock. Even his breathing had not changed. Sure enough, with a gust of wind, Li Jinsong's figure appeared again. He circled around to make sure that no one was eavesdropping. Then he flew away. He had finally left. Chu Yang breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that the secret he had eavesdropped on today was related to the life and death of Beyond the Heavens sect. It was extremely important. If he was discovered, escaping would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. He had to be cautious. No one would have thought that the traitor of Beyond the Heavens sect was the second in command of the sect, the powerful Li Jinsong. Chu Yang was about to stand up and move his stiff limbs when suddenly his whole body tensed up. He quietly raised his head to look at the scene. On the stage, at the place where the 4 of them were talking, a black-clothed figure had appeared without a sound. Chu Yang's scalp was numb because he did not notice when this person had arrived. This person was dressed in black and had a tall stature. He stood there for a long time without moving. After a while, he suddenly sighed deeply and lightly said, Chu Yang, you can come out. Chu Yang's scalp suddenly exploded. It seemed that this person had noticed his arrival. And he even recognized him. It was too late to leave now. And this person's tone did not seem to have any evil intentions. Chu Yang's heart hardened. He stood up and walked forward step by step. You heard everything, right? The person with his hands behind his back said to Chu Yang. Yes, you also heard everything, right? I'm afraid you heard it even more clearly than me? Chu Yang smiled faintly, squinted his eyes and asked back. The person let out a low laugh and slowly turned around. At this time, the darkest moment had passed. The sky was gradually becoming hazy. The faint starlight in the sky shone on this person's face. 3 strands of black beard floated in front of his chest. His face was square and serious. He was not angry, but he was dignified. Chu Yang looked and could not help but be even more surprised. He was so surprised that he almost could not speak. This person was the current sect master of Beyond the Heavens sect, Wu Yunliang. Why was he here? If he was here, then he must have known about Li Jinsong's scheme. Why did he not stop him? For a moment, Chu Yang's heart was filled with doubts. He only felt confused. Even though he had lived 2 lives, he could not understand the complexity of this situation. He could not figure out what was going on. Follow me. Wu Yunliang looked at the gradually brightening sky. Suddenly he reached out and grabbed Chu Yang's sleeve, pulling him along as they ran. After turning left and right, they turned into a valley not far from Purple Bamboo Garden. Although this valley was not very remote, it was very desolate. Because there was nothing inside, Chu Yang and the others did not come here. Here, there was a cave in the mountain wall, forming a natural cave. It was not even 2 feet deep. Come in. Wu Yunliang led the way. Chapter 35. Chu Yang also followed him inside. Inside, there was a small stone table that was very smooth. It looked like it was made into a bench. It seemed that people often came here to sit. Sure enough, Wu Yunliang waved his sleeves and sat down. He looked up at Chu Yang and sized him up. The corners of his mouth curled up in a friendly smile. You are not bad. Wu Yunliang's first sentence was like this. Those 3 people are from Great Zhao's Golden Horse Riders Department. Golden Horse Riders Department belongs to the current Prime Minister, Diwu Qingro. It is an absolutely secret organization. Wu Yunliang did not wait for Chu Yang to speak and began to explain. Golden Horse Riders Hall, Diwu Qingro. Chu Yang looked pensive. These 2 names were also very famous in his previous life. They were like thunder piercing the ears. Golden Horse Riders Department was actually the secret weapon of Great Zhao. I will not explain too much here. You can imagine the Ming Dynasty's Eastern Faction Guards and the Imperial Bodyguards. The more I explain, the more nonsense I will say. Diwu Qingrou's name was gentle, but he was actually an ambitious and ruthless person. It was rumored that he did not understand martial arts, but he entered school at 3 years old. At 5 years old, he became famous all over the world. At 10 years old, he became an official and managed a county in an orderly manner. At 20 years old, he was already the Southeast Inspector of Great Zhao. At 25 years old, he officially entered the Imperial Cabinet and patrolled the entire Great Zhao. At 30 years old, he became the Prime Minister. This year, he was not even 35 years old, but he was already the most powerful person in Great Zhao. He could call the wind and summon the rain. He commanded hundreds of officials and commanded the world. This kind of achievement was unique in all of history. Throughout history, officials and generals opposed each other. However, this Diwu Qingro was able to subdue all of the military officials. Not only did he have the ability to govern, but he also had the ambition to expand his territory. Unifying the world was Diwu Qingrou's biggest goal. In his previous life, the name Diwu Qingro was the shadow of the entire lower 3 heavens. In the entire world, there was no conspiracy that did not have Diwu Qingrou's shadow and influence. It was under Diwu Qingrou's plan that Golden Horse Riders Department secretly carried out. Tai Tai Butian, who was widely recognized as the next ruler of Ironcloud Nation, was assassinated, and Great Zhao's armored cavalry marched straight in and destroyed Ironcloud. Their momentum was like the sun in the sky for a while. Moreover, they used the remaining momentum to swallow up the Limitless Nation in one fell swoop. They occupied the position of absolute overlord in the entire lower three heavens. The most powerful aspect of Di Wuqingro was that he not only used the political power of the imperial court, but also the power of the big sects of Jianghu. He made use of their conflicts and interests to create chaos or alliances. Unintentionally, these sects helped Great Zhao accomplish many things that the imperial court could not or would not be able to do. Moreover, the most amazing thing was that after the incident, no one discovered it. If he hadn't said it himself, he was afraid that all the large sects would still be in the dark. When Chu Yang left for upper three heavens to look for the tribulation sword, the Great Zhao Empire's cavalry had already destroyed Iron Cloud and Wuji. They gradually expanded their territory. The name of the Golden Horse Riders department spread throughout the world because of the destruction of these two countries. Wu Yunliang naturally did not know that Chu Yang already knew about these matters. He still explained to him what the Golden Horse Riders department was. I just want to know, why didn't you stop it? Chu Yang frowned. Why should I stop it? Wu Yunliang smiled. These past few years, I have been accompanying my second brother. We would wake up early in the morning and go to that place to practice martial arts. Wu Yunliang smiled mockingly, although he did not know. Since they started to contact each other 5 years ago, I have always been clear about it. Chu Yang was startled. Looking at Wu Yunliang's warm and dignified face, he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. In his previous life, because his sect was destroyed and Chu Yang did not have any contact with this sect leader, he looked down on him. How could a sect leader's sect be wiped out under his watch? What was the use of such a sect leader? But now, he knew that this sect leader Wu Yunliang was very scheming. If anyone thought of him as a fool, then that person was a real fool. Actually, if you think about it, who could be a sect leader? Which one of them was easy to deal with? But Wu Yunliang actually allowed a conspiracy to exist and develop under his nose for 5 years. Chu Yang looked at Wu Yunliang's calm face and understood something. The first step was to incite internal strife within Beyond the Heavens sect. When I took over Beyond the Heavens sect, the Marshall brothers were not convinced. The elders were also divided into factions. Internal strife was already rampant. They needed to be cleansed to become stronger. Wu Yunliang said heavily, so I allowed them to do this. If they did not succeed, then they would be destroyed. There was nothing to say. In the second year, they gradually revealed their goal. That was to use Beyond the Heavens sect's status as a sect to incite a war between Great Zhao and Iron Cloud. They wanted to use the smallest price to swallow Iron Cloud and preserve their strength to unify the world. How is this possible? Chu Yang asked in surprise. Even if Beyond the Heavens sect was strong, it was still only a sect. What ability did it have to incite a war between two countries? There is nothing impossible in this world. What matters is whether it is done or not and how it is done. Wu Yunliang smiled coldly. Sect leader Marshal Uncle, why are you telling me this today? Isn't this the first time we have met? The more Chu Yang listened, the more restless he became. It was as if he had walked into a trap and was stuck in the mud. Don't be impatient. I have my reasons for telling you this. Sit down. Wu Yunliang glared at him. Chu Yang helplessly rolled his eyes. He simply moved over a rock and sat on it. It was not clear whether it was intentional or not, but the rock he brought was much bigger than Wu Yunliang's rock. Originally, Chu Yang was standing and Wu Yunliang was sitting. It was as if he was lecturing him. But now that he was sitting, he was about the same height as when he was standing, but he was looking down on him. Instead, the sect leader sat below him. This kind of situation was simply turning from a lecture to a report. Wu Yunliang frowned and looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. He did not care about Chu Yang's rudeness and continued to speak. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. As long as Wu Yunliang said one word of dissatisfaction, he would immediately withdraw from this whirlpool. But this bastard did not say anything. Curiosity killed the cat. This saying was true. Chu Yang regretted it. Tell me, why would I chase after those 3 people when I had nothing better to do? Didn't he just find a rope to hang himself? Iron Cloud's Tai Bu Tian was young, only 17 or 18 years old, but he was a great strategist. Plus, he paid a lot of attention to the people outside of the court, especially the people who were willing to die. He personally created the heaven-mending pavilion. Inside, he gathered all the heroes from the 3 mountains and 5 peaks, especially this person who treated the wise with respect. He had the spirit to rule the world and was magnanimous. He was a rare young leader. Iron Cloud's ruler, Tai Shircheng, was bedridden for many years. The entire country was supported by Tai Bu-Tian. Even though he did not ascend the throne, he was already the ruler of Iron Cloud. He was also the spiritual pillar of Iron Cloud's military. It could be said that with Tai Bu-Tian's death, Iron Cloud Nation collapsed. Chu Yang listlessly replied, so what if he was young and powerful? In another 3 years, he would still be killed. The nation would also be destroyed. Chu Yang still remembered that in his previous life, Iron Cloud's Tai Bu-Tian was killed because Great Zhao sent out more than 500 experts. They also spent a lot of money to hire several assassin organizations before they succeeded. But after the event, none of these people survived. Chapter 36. However, the Great Zhao Empire caught hold of his weakness, and it was because of his respect for the wise. Wu Yunliang said heavily, being courteous to the wise is of course an advantage. But it is also because of this that there are no fights. Without a fight, it gives an opportunity for assassins. That's why many people are easy to approach before they succeed. But after they succeed, they become difficult to approach. This is not a change in personality, but a safety measure. Chu Yang had a lazy expression on his face, but in his heart, he was shouting, "That makes sense." Great Zhao sent more than 20 assassins to assassinate Tai Bu-Tian, but they all returned without success. So, they wanted to use Beyond the Heavens sect. Wu Yunliang sneered. Chu Yang sighed and said, "So when eldest martial uncle heard their plan, you decided not to expose it, but to beat them at their own game?" "That's right." Wu Yunliang said, "Since they want to use us, why can't we use them to rise up?" Chu Yang finally understood why Beyond the Heavens sect was destroyed in his previous life. Wu Yunliang must have wanted to use the war between the 2 countries as an opportunity to rise up, but he overreached himself. But there must have been a lot of complicated matters involved. After all, facing a freak like Diwu Qingro, no one had any confidence. Even Mo Tianji, who was known as the master of calculation and manipulation in his previous life, could only concede defeat to Diwu Qingro, the prime minister of a secular country. Diwu Qingro was known throughout the lower 3 heavens as one man who could fight against 1,000,000 masters. Speaking of this person, even his enemies could not help but admire him. They had to admit that this person was truly one of a kind. This person was a natural schemer, a politician, and a military strategist. Plus, he was open-minded and all-encompassing. Someone once said that even if Diwu Qingro did not know any martial arts, he could still become the overlord of upper 3 heavens. This evaluation was so high that it was shocking. Wu Yunliang was only taking a risk. It was like walking on a tightrope on a cliff. If he was not careful, he would be crushed to pieces. "I am also taking a big risk." Wu Yunliang's face was heavy with worry. "If I was not careful, Beyond the Heavens sect would have been destroyed. But I had to take this risk." Chu Yang nodded, agreeing with this statement. In order to implement this plan, Great Zhao has been oppressing Beyond the Heavens sect for the past few years. However, they are not forcing us to our deaths. They are only vaguely forcing us to move closer to Iron Cloud. As long as we get closer, there will be spies within our ranks. Furthermore, other than your second martial uncle, among the 10 of us, 3 of us are in cahoots with other sections. This is also the result of the pressure that those sects have been exerting on us in recent years. I suspect that this is also Diwu Qingro's scheme, but I have not yet discerned his motive. But one thing is for sure. Once we get close, it will be much easier for these people to assassinate Tai Bu-Tian. Wu Yunliang said worriedly. Diwu Qingro only wants Tai Bu-Tian dead. He doesn't care about Beyond the Heavens sect. But once Tai Bu-Tian dies, our Beyond the Heavens sect will definitely be annihilated. Chu Yang's face gradually became heavy. He didn't know all the details, but he knew one thing. Tai Budian had indeed died in her previous life. He died 2 months before the destruction of Beyond the Heavens sect. If Wu Yunliang still insisted on the original plan, then the tragedy would most likely repeat itself. If Wu Yunliang gave up, then Beyond the Heavens sect would be destroyed even faster under Diwu Qingrou's instigation, coupled with the heavy blows from the imperial court and the other sects. Moreover, they were already riding a tiger and had no way to back down. Beyond the Heavens sect and Iron Cloud Nation had already established a relationship. Even if Wu Yunliang was not present, Li Jinsong could still be the representative. This way, it would be much easier to complete Diwu Qingrou's plan. With Diwu Qingrou's world-shaking planning ability, it would not be difficult to accomplish this. In fact, it would be a walk in the park. The reason why Diwu Qingrou chose Beyond the Heavens sect was not only because of the above reasons, but also because Beyond the Heavens sect was the closest route from Great Zhao to Limitless Nation. Plus, this place had high mountains and dense forests. Even if 100,000 troops were hidden there, they would not be discovered. This was an extremely important strategic location. If Iron Cloud Nation was destroyed, Great Zhao would send troops from Iron Cloud. After passing through Beyond the Heavens sect, they would be able to invade Limitless Nation in less than 5 days. At that time, the other troops would also attack. Limitless Nation would not be able to hold on for more than a month before being destroyed. In other words, Diwu Qingrou had arranged layers upon layers. With Beyond the Heavens sect, he had paved the way to unify the world. The specific plan was certainly not that simple. There were probably countless schemes, countless operations, and countless hidden plots. Chu Yang did not know about all of these, but Chu Yang knew that this was indeed how things developed in his previous life. The problem now was that Chu Yang clearly knew the direction of this entire matter, but he was powerless to do anything about it. He could not think of any way to stop it. Even if he said it, no one would believe him. Brother, if you went out and said, "I came back from the year 2050, and the earth was destroyed at that time," how many people on the street would believe you? I reckon that they would all call you a lunatic in unison. Moreover, could you stop the destruction of the earth? Even if you knew when it was going to be destroyed, what could you do? Chu Yang was currently in this kind of situation. Right now, he was only an ordinary disciple of Beyond the Heavens sect. What ability did he have to reverse the fate of the millions of troops from 3 nations? For the first time, he had such a feeling. History could not be reversed. Even if he was reborn, it was only his own matter. It had nothing to do with others. History could not be reversed. Then what about Qingwu? What to do? Could it be that after I was reborn, I still have to watch the tragedy happen before my eyes? At this moment, Chu Yang suddenly had a very clear and mysterious feeling. His spirit had unexpectedly advanced into a wonderful realm. If I don't change this matter, then it proves that history can't be changed. Those who deserve to die would still die. Even if he was reborn thousands of times, everyone had their own destiny, and it could not be reversed. If this matter could not be changed, then even Mo Qingwu's destiny could not be changed. At most, it could be brought forward or delayed by a few years. Just like Shi Qianshan, he would still die 4 years later. Now he had only died 4 years earlier. As for Mo Qingwu, Chu Yang's rebirth might let her live a few more years, but she might also meet with misfortune in advance. These were all things that could not be predicted. But as long as the general trend of history did not change, Mo Qingwu would definitely not stay with Chu Yang for a lifetime. This was fate. It had its own destiny. No one could change it. This was a kind of enlightenment, and also the deepest understanding of the heavenly way. Chu Yang suddenly had an epiphany at this moment. History was the trajectory of the heavenly way. But it was this enlightenment that made him suddenly feel irritated and violent, and the bloody killing intent in his heart soared. If history could not be reversed, then did that mean Qingwu would still die? Chapter 37. Across from him, Wu Yunliang widened his eyes in shock. Just a moment ago, Chu Yang was quietly listening to him. But in the next moment, Chu Yang seemed to have entered a mysterious realm. He was clearly very close, but Wu Yunliang could not feel his presence. At this moment, Chu Yang's murderous aura rose to the extreme. Wu Yunliang stood up in shock and looked at Chu Yang in disbelief. He could no longer maintain his previous calmness. This kind of murderous aura made Wu Yunliang feel that under this kind of murderous aura, even if millions of people were slaughtered, Wu Yunliang would believe it. Chu Yang's murderous aura was like a tidal wave. He clenched his fists tightly, and his whole body emitted a dangerous aura. In his meridians, a bloodthirsty aura was surging like the tide of the sea. The murderous aura in his meridians rushed into his dantian like a tidal wave. It surged in his dantian like waves beating against the shore. At this moment, Chu Yang suddenly let out a low laugh. He forcefully withdrew his spirit from that mysterious realm. That was the realm of the heavenly path. The realm of the heavenly path that martial artists yearn to enter in their dreams. Chu Yang actually withdrew. Without any reluctance. A violent backlash came like a violent wave. Chu Yang's body shook. The deepest part of his spirit suddenly shook like a tsunami. Blood came out of his 7 orifices. Suddenly, his eyes shone brightly. He said fiercely, "Who said history cannot be reversed? Why must it be reversed? If the heavens do not accept it, the heavens will also be reversed." Wu Yunliang did not know why Chu Yang suddenly said these words. He could not help but stare blankly. But at this moment, in Chu Yang's dantian, the anger and murderous aura surged and suddenly exploded. An empty voice laughed and said, "Not bad, not bad. You finally comprehended the foundation of the calamity sword. That is, the heavens can be reversed." At this moment, the cloudless skies suddenly rumbled. A huge thunderbolt seemed to carry the wrath of heaven and earth as it fiercely struck down. The dazzling white light of the lightning lit up the surrounding thousands of miles as if it was daytime. It was incomparably bright. The entire upper half of the mountain burst like a bubble. Millions of pieces of rock flew in all directions. In a moment, the mountain shook as if the end of the world had arrived. The cave where Chu Yang and Wu Yunliang were was turned into an open-air plaza. Wu Yunliang cried out in alarm and jumped up. He felt his scalp go numb, and his whole body was covered in cold sweat. He scratched his head in confusion, not knowing what was going on. Chu Yang clearly heard this voice coming from his dantian. His whole body couldn't help but tremble. He wanted to open his mouth to speak, but he didn't know what to say because he clearly heard this voice coming from his dantian. Or rather, it was a direct telepathic conversation. While he was still in a daze, the empty voice came again. "The heavens are nothing. Tear it apart. Break it. Fate was nothing. Change it. Go against it. History is nothing. Destroy it. Destroy it." This spiritual consciousness carried an indescribable arrogance, as well as an unruly arrogance that looked down on all the heavens and earth. Accompanied by the rumbling of thunder outside, there was even a sense of arrogance. Chu Yang's mind was shaken. He couldn't help but mutter, "Heaven is nothing. Tear it apart, crush it. Fate is nothing. Change it. Go against it. History is nothing. Destroy it. Destroy it." He felt that these words were just right for him. This kind of arrogance, this kind of arrogance, this kind of unruly feeling was the kind of feeling he wanted. The arrogant voice laughed and said, "You are right. If you want to change your fate, you have to change the trajectory of this world from now on. Go against it. Otherwise, even if you eat shit, you won't be able to eat it while it's still hot. If you can't reverse fate and history, then Mo Qingwu will still die." Chu Yang was shaken. He was about to speak when a confused voice said, "What are you talking about? What happened to you?" Chu Yang was startled. He looked up and saw Wu Yunliang looking at him with a face full of shock and confusion. Looking at his appearance, it was obvious that he didn't hear anything. When he carefully checked his dantian, he found that there was no movement at all. Everything that happened just now was like a dream. But Chu Yang clearly knew that this was not a dream. "I am fine. Chu Yang chuckled. He found that his whole body was sweating profusely. His clothes were wet as if he had just come out of the water. Why you suddenly in a daze? Why you sweating so strangely? And you are bleeding from all your orifices? And what happened just now? Why did this kind of lightning appear? It blew up the entire mountain peak. Wu Yunliang looked up at the sky with some fear. Then he worriedly looked at Chu Yang. Chu Yang, you don't have any hidden illness, do you? Without waiting for Chu Yang to answer, he grabbed Chu Yang's wrist and used his martial energy to check. But after a careful examination, he did not find anything wrong with Chu Yang's body. He could not help but shake his head and said, "Strange. I don't know. Maybe I was too nervous when I was following those people and eavesdropping. Now I feel scared." Chu Yang tried to cover it up. That's possible. Wu Yunliang advised, but don't be careless. If you feel anything wrong with your body, you must immediately tell your master. If your master doesn't know what to do, tell him to come find me. Chu Yang quickly agreed. Those words were still echoing in his mind. History can be reversed. Destiny can be reversed. Heaven can be reversed. If you want to change your destiny, then you must reverse it. Then I will reverse it. Chu Yang gritted his teeth. Reverse? Mother. Since he wants to reverse it, then how can he reverse it? Let's find another place to talk. Wu Yunliang grabbed Chu Yang and flew out of the cave. The commotion just now was too big. There were already many people coming this way. The two of them walked around a few times before they found a suitable place to hide. Chu Yang felt a bit funny. He was following the sect master of Beyond the Heavens sect. He was moving around within the territory of Beyond the Heavens sect, but he felt like a thief. This kind of feeling was too wonderful for words. Did you hear what I said just now? Wu Yunliang asked, what do you think? Chu Yang's mind started to work quickly. He remained silent for a long time without speaking. After a long while, he said thoughtfully, Martial Uncle Sect Leader, do you mean, since they want to stir up disputes, they should take this opportunity to unify the world? Then we should just go with the flow? Wu Yunliang's eyes showed appreciation. He said, yes, continue. Chu Yang's mind turned quickly. He slowly said, once the two countries go to war, then we may have a chance. Or rather, Iron Cloud may have a chance. Sect Master Martial Uncle's meaning should be to find a foothold for Beyond the Heavens sect in this chaotic war. Wu Yunliang's eyes showed even more appreciation. He said, there is a key person in this. This person is definitely not Diwu Qingro, but Tai Bu Tian. Chu Yang said, anyone can die, but Tai Bu Tian cannot. As long as Tai Bu Tian is here, with his prestige and methods, he can organize a military force to fight against Diwu Qingro. Protect Iron Cloud. Chu Yang said, then even if the war ends and Great Zhao wins, it will be a Pyrrhic victory. If they want to annex Limitless Nation, they will not have the ability to do so. They will also have to worry about Limitless Nation taking the initiative to attack. This way, Diwu Qingro will not dare to act rashly. Chapter 38. Therefore, this battle of the world will only be between Tai Bu Tian and Diwu Qingro. And Diwu Qingro is most worried about Tai Bu Tian. Therefore, no matter what, he would rather take a roundabout route and kill Tai Bu Tian first. Therefore, our mission is to protect Tai Bu Tian's life. After all, we came from Great Zhao. If Tai Bu Tian dies, we will be the biggest suspects. We will be the first to be killed by Iron Cloud Nation. And Great Zhao will not let traitors like us live. Chu Yang finished his analysis in one breath. Then he realized that all the focus was on one person, Tai Bu Tian. A 17 or 18-year-old boy was a thorn in the eyes of a matchless hero like Diwu Qingro. A thorn in his flesh. Then, how monstrous was this boy? In his previous life, Chu Yang only knew that Tai Bu Tian was assassinated at Kai Tian Gorge. He also knew that this person had great prestige. But he never cared about these things. Thinking about it now, he could not help but feel a chill down his spine. A 17 or 18-year-old boy who could rival Diwu Qingro. He was definitely not easy to deal with. This reminded Chu Yang of the legend of the upper three heavens, limitless invincible saber, Lu Yongxiang. This peerless legend had already become a legendary martial saint. Wouldn't he be as amazing as Diwu Qingro? There was also the all-powerful Duke Xie of upper three heavens, Ao Xie Yun. At such a young age, he was already evil. There was also the mysterious woman who controlled the dark side of upper three heavens, Jun Shizhu. These people, along with Tai Bu Tian and Diwu Qingro, were all rare geniuses. Fortunately, they were scattered in 3 different places. Otherwise, who knows what would happen to this world? There is one more thing you neglected. Wu Yunliang looked at him with admiration. We only need to help Tai Bu Tian defeat Diwu Qingro. Then we will have made a great contribution. Our Beyond the Heavens sect will rise. Plus, as long as we do it properly, we can eliminate all the hidden dangers of Beyond the Heavens sect. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Defeat Diwu Qingro? Easier said than done. Diwu Qingro has never been defeated in politics or war. Wanting to defeat him is difficult. Chu Yang thought this and immediately became alert. Wu Yunliang is right. Now that I've decided to go against my destiny, I must face Diwu Qingro. If I continue to maintain this belief that Diwu Qingro is invincible, then I will definitely lose. He had to win. At the very least, he had to keep Tai Butian alive so that she could destroy Diwu Qingro's plan. Take control of the entire change of fate in your own hands. Whether it was Beyond the Heavens sect, Tan Tan, or Master. And Qing Wu. While he was thinking, he heard Wu Yunliang sigh and say, "Speaking of this matter, Chu Yang, you made a big mistake in this matter. The mistake you made has completely ruined my original plan. In fact, we can't even proceed." Chu Yang was taken aback and said, "What? Did I make a mistake?" He thought, I didn't do anything. How did he suddenly become so heinous? You killed Shi Qianshan. You killed him too early. Wu Yunliang let out a long sigh. Shi Qianshan was an indispensable part of my plan. Chu Yang raised his eyebrows. Shi Qianshan? Correct. Although Shi Qianshan is sinister and cunning, on the surface he is mature and wise. Moreover, he is good at observing people and flattering people. Even though I despise this little brother of mine, he is a very good candidate for the government. Wu Yunliang sighed. Officialdom? Chu Yang was startled. What does this have to do with officialdom? My original plan was to have one person leave Beyond the Heavens sect and enter Iron Cloud Nation with a secret identity. It would be best if he could become a trusted aide. First, he could ensure Iron Cloud Nation's safety. Second, he could become someone who could speak for Beyond the Heavens sect in the event of success. Wu Yunliang said seriously, we have to rise, but we also have to bear such a great risk. What we need is not as simple as a Jianghu sect. But at that time, we will have no one in the court. Even if we have a great achievement, it will be useless if no one mentions it. At a critical moment, we must have someone like that. Using money to bribe officials is possible, but that kind of person is not reliable. Chu Yang nodded in agreement. If he can be bribed by you, then he can be bribed by others. He could even be bribed by Diwu Qingro. That would be the end of the line. Sending his own people in was the most reassuring thing. I originally wanted to send Shi Qianshan to Iron Cloud. But he was killed by... Wu Yunliang snorted. Shi Qianshan even poisoned his master. Then, at a critical moment, betraying the sect is not a big deal. I actually think that by killing him, I have removed a hidden danger. Chu Yang opposed with equal harshness. This was the time to discuss conditions. When Chu Yang heard this, he knew what Wu Yunliang wanted him to do. Naturally, he would not give in so easily. Although this goal was exactly the same as his own, his heart was already very willing. But how could he let go of this opportunity to extort? My original plan was to send 2 elites, one to Great Zhao and the other to Iron Cloud. The one to Great Zhao would be in charge of gathering information. He would also be in charge of saving a few lives when the sect is in danger, thus continuing the sect's legacy. But after thinking about it, I gave up. No matter how beneficial it is always a way out. If there is a way out, there is no need to go all out. Shi Qianshan, you killed him too early. Wu Yunliang sighed and repeated this sentence. Yes, it was too early. Chu Yang also felt this way. These past few days, I have been observing you. Wu Yunliang said deeply, you, Chu Yang, are scheming and far-sighted. You are vicious and merciless. Your skin is also thick enough. You are decisive and not sloppy. With your personality, you are a person who can achieve great things. In any aspect, you are 100 times better than Shi Qianshan. But only Shi Qianshan has 3 good qualities that you do not have. 3 good qualities? Chu Yang nodded and said, the first is being despicable. The second is being flexible and flattering. Seeing people speak human words, seeing ghosts speak ghost words. The third is being unscrupulous in order to achieve your goals. Very good. Wu Yunliang clapped his hands and said, do you think this makes you a bad person? These 3 good qualities can't even be called good qualities? Shouldn't it be eggs instead? I don't think so. Chu Yang said seriously, even though I will not do this, I have my own way of doing things. That's right. If these 3 things were placed on a person, then that person would be like a pile of dog shit. However, being involved in politics and being a part of the government is a must. Wu Yunliang sneered. Ever since the fight between you and Chu Ping, I have been coming to see you every 2 or 3 days. You have done very well. You have also realized your own shortcomings. Many times, you have been paying attention to Shi Qianshan. From him, you have been finding ways to make up for your own shortcomings. I am very pleased. Wu Yunliang sighed and said, unfortunately, Shi Qianshan's heart was too evil. In the end, he buried himself. But you have killed him too early. If you had let Shi Qianshan continue to beg for mercy, he would have wept bitterly and found all kinds of excuses to beg for mercy. In the end, even though you would have killed him, your heart would have felt that this person's reasons were not without reason. This is a very important lesson. But you have already killed him, so you have missed this lesson. Wu Yunliang said, there will always be adversity in life. Fighting alone in the whirlpool of politics, and with the identity of a spy, you will always face the threat of death. Begging for mercy at this critical moment is sometimes the greatest wisdom. Only by keeping your life can you do other things. Chu Yang was silent for a while. Then he quietly asked, Martial Uncle Sect Master, what you said, can you do it yourself? Even if you can, would you be willing to do it? Wu Yunliang was stunned. Chapter 39. After a long time, Wu Yunliang smiled bitterly and said, I can't do it. He sighed. Yes, if I can't do it, how can I ask someone else to do it? Wu Yunliang was silent for a while and said, but you killed Shi Qianshan, so this person will be replaced by you. You, go and complete this mission. Or rather, you, go and fight for your future. Also, help Beyond the Heavens sect. Chu Yang was silent. To complete this mission was to say goodbye to his previous life. Plus, he would have to face the most terrifying person in the world, Diwu Qingro. But this seemed to be a predestined enemy. If he wanted to change his fate and save Imo Qingwu, he must defeat Diwu Qingro. Reverse fate. With Chu Yang's current status, it was easier said than done to defeat a matchless hero like Diwu Qingro in all aspects. Chu Yang originally thought that since he was reborn, he would at least have some understanding of his previous life's matters. From there, he would be able to avoid calamity with ease. But at this moment, after this incident, he knew that his life had once again entered the boundless unknown. Whether it was danger or opportunity, it was 1,000 times more than his previous life. With one person's power, he could change the entire world. Death and life ambush from all sides. Going against fate, going against the heavens, going against history, going against the heavenly Tao. But Chu Yang could not shrink back. For Qingwu, for his master, for himself, for the sake of refusing to accept this fate arranged by the heavens. He must reverse it. I will go. Chu Yang was silent. His eyebrows slowly raised. These two words seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 caddies. Wu Yunliang's heart relaxed, but he heard Chu Yang continue, "But I have a condition." "What condition?" "Speak. As long as the sect can do it, even if you want this old man's life, I will give it to you." Wu Yunliang relaxed. "I want to enter Seven Shades congregation grounds." Chu Yang raised his head, his eyes flashing. "I don't want to compete with the younger brother. I also don't need the position and glory of being the younger brother of the sect master, but I need to increase my strength. If you agree, I will go." "No problem. Tomorrow I will let you in." Wu Yunliang paced 2 steps. His eyes flashed with determination. He immediately made a decision. Chu Yang's heart was excited. "Calamity Sword. You are about to come into my hands." The Calamity Sword was the key to reversing fate. It was also Chu Yang's biggest trump card. Absolute power. "Once you accept this mission, I will erase all traces of you from Beyond the Heavens sect. From now on, you are no longer a disciple of Beyond the Heavens sect. This mission is extremely difficult and requires you to work hard on your own. What I can give you is 300,000 taels of silver and a good sword. As for what you need for cultivation, I will personally bring it to you in secret every time." Wu Yunliang let out a long sigh and said seriously, "Our opponent is Diwu Qingro. We cannot be careless. As long as Iron Cloud is not destroyed, Beyond the Heavens sect will rise. As for you, Chu Yang, even if you become the Prime Minister of Iron Cloud, it is your own fortune and your own future. Naturally, if you choose to return at that time, I'll welcome you with open arms. As for the sect tournament, it's just a means to attract the attention of the outside world. It's just a small game. It doesn't matter to you now. I only hope that no matter what, you will never forget what I have entrusted you today." Chu Yang nodded solemnly. "Right now, Qian Qian is in Iron Cloud Citadel. Your martial uncles, Shui Yi, and Mu Shang do not know you. I will tell Qian Qian what to do." "No, I will do it myself." Chu Yang refused. "What a joke. If I want to change my identity, then no one can know. It would be best if I change my identity and face so that even Wu Yunliang cannot know my true face. That would be the safest. As for the cultivation materials that Wu Yunliang provided, that would depend on the situation. As long as the first part of Tribulation Sword was in his hands, then he would not need to worry about cultivation materials." Now he finally understood why Wu Qianqian liked Shi Qianshan in his previous life. It must be because of Shi Qianshan's mission that he had the opportunity to get along with Wu Qianqian. Even without this mission, Chu Yang would have gone to Iron Cloud Citadel. Because the second part of Tribulation Sword was in an extremely secret place in Iron Cloud Citadel. In his previous life, after Iron Cloud Citadel was destroyed, Chu Yang traveled through Jianghu and found the second part of Tribulation Sword with the help of the sword's energy. Moreover, it was only after 1 year of continuous improvement that he was able to obtain it. Because Tribulation Sword had a strict division of levels, if one's cultivation was not high enough and forcefully touched the second part of Tribulation Sword, there would be a backlash. The next day, early in the morning, Meng Chao Ran stood in front of the purple bamboo forest and looked at his little brother who he had high hopes for. He did not say anything for a long time. After a long time, he finally sighed, "Chu Yang, this time, you will die. Moreover, you will be alone and without help. Everything, including food, clothing, shelter, and transportation, including taking risks, you can only rely on yourself." He paused and stared deeply at Chu Yang. "You have thought it through?" Chu Yang was about to speak when Meng Chao Ran waved his hand and interrupted him. "Don't be in a hurry to answer. Think about it carefully. With me here, if you do not want to do something, no one can force you. If you do not agree, I will go find the sect master and ask him to take care of this matter." Chu Yang was moved. When his little brother was faced with the most important decision of his life, Meng Chao Ran, who was always calm and did not care about anything, could not help but reveal his true feelings. There are many things in life that must be done even if you cannot do them. There are also many things that cannot be avoided even if you want to. Master, you also said that we must always have a goal to protect, a person that we care about. Chu Yang said seriously, just like this mission, I am also protecting my heart. I must do it. Meng Ran was silent. After a long time, he slowly walked in front of Chu Yang and patted his shoulder. When he lifted his hand from Chu Yang's shoulder, he stopped in midair and sighed softly. His hand fell back and smoothed out the wrinkles on Chu Yang's clothes. Then, he took 2 steps back and quietly looked at him for a while. Finally, he turned around and looked up at the sky, standing with his hands behind his back. He heaved a deep sigh. Master. Chu Yang's heart felt warm and he could not help but call out. After a long time, Meng Ran waved his sleeve and said in a hoarse voice, Good. I will take you to the Gathering Clouds Peak, to the 7 Shades congregation ground. After he finished speaking, he led the way and did not look back. Meng Ran also did not dare to look back. He was afraid that his little brother would discover the weakness in his heart. He only had 3 little brothers. But in just a few days, his eldest brother had betrayed him and died. Now, his second brother had to rush into the vast and unpredictable future. This journey would be filled with difficulties and hardships, and he would die. How could this master feel at ease with this? How could he endure this? The master and disciple were silent as they walked towards the Gathering Clouds Peak. Meng Ran was in front and Chu Yang was behind. Neither of them spoke. Walking on the mountain path with the biting cold wind in the early morning, the master and disciple both felt that the weather today was so stagnant, almost as if they couldn't breathe. After a long time, seeing that they were approaching the mountain gate, Chu Yang finally said, Master, Tantan, he still does not know about this matter. Don't worry. I will take good care of him. Meng Ran said coldly, In the future, I will love and care for him as if he is my only child. After all, if you die, I can only rely on Tantan to take care of me in old age. Chu Yang stuck out his tongue and did not dare to speak again, but he was also relieved. Chapter 40. Chu Yang knew that even though Meng Ran's words were not polite, he understood what he meant. So, Tantan would certainly be safe and sound with these words of his. When they passed through the gatekeeper saw Meng Ran's cold face and his body was like a bag of explosives. He did not even dare to ask and let them pass. Wu Yunliang was already waiting outside the gate. Today, all the disciples went to Locking Clouds Peak for the test. This was Wu Yunliang's plan to create a private, secret environment for Chu Yang. Seeing Wu Yunliang, Meng Ran's eyes turned cold, but he did not say anything. Wu Yunliang smiled bitterly. He did not say anything else and said, Follow me. He led the way. When they reached the main hall, they passed by the ancestral shrine. Wu Yunliang opened a secret passage and led Chu Yang and Meng Ran in. The path twisted and turned as they went down. It seemed to be very deep. There was a spacious main hall underground. In front of the main hall, there was a stone door made of green jade. The temperature here was freezing cold. Your master and I will wait for you here. Only one person can enter 7 Shades congregation ground at a time. You can go in by yourself. How much good fortune you can obtain will depend on yourself. Go straight from this green jade door. Go through 7 of these doors and you will arrive at 7 Shades congregation ground. Remember, if you cannot withstand the cold, immediately leave. Do not try to be brave. Chu Yang nodded and agreed. He raised his head and looked at the tall green jade door. His eyes shone with a sharp light. His dantian shook as if it felt something. The calamity sword suddenly moved like a tsunami. It was like a child jumping for joy. Seeing Chu Yang open the green jade door and walk in, Wu Yunliang and Meng Ran stood side by side without saying anything. After a while, Meng Ran said, Eldest martial brother, do you know who Chu Yang is? Wu Yunliang was silent and did not say anything. Chu Yang, he was only 3 months old. I picked him up and raised him by my side. After so many years, rather than saying that I am his master, it would be better to say that I am his father, his mother. I gave him his name. Chu Yang, rising sun, represents my life's greatest hope. Eldest senior brother, do you understand? I understand. Wu Yunliang sighed heavily. You don't understand. Meng Chao Ran stood there desolately. Suddenly, he turned around and punched Wu Yunliang in the face. Wu Yunliang's body leaned back, but he did not make a sound. Meng Chao Ran showed no mercy. Following that, he raised his leg and ruthlessly kicked him in the stomach, causing him to fall to the ground. Then, Meng Chao Ran jumped up and rode on his body. His fists rained down like raindrops. Muffled sounds of punches and kicks resounded. Both of them did not say a word. Meng Chao Ran of Beyond the Heavens sect grabbed his sect leader's senior martial brother and ruthlessly beat him to his heart's content. From start to finish, Wu Yunliang did not fight back. He did not make a sound. By the time Meng Chao Ran stopped after several hundred punches, the sect master of Beyond the Heavens sect's face was already swollen like a pig's head, and his entire body was covered in bruises. The youngest? That's more like you. After 20 years, as your elder brother, I finally saw you get angry. All these years, you have been so quiet, making me feel uncomfortable. Pa. Wu Yunliang lay on the ground and coughed. He said, "For this one time, I was beaten up by you. Even if it was more ruthless or heavier, it was worth it. I am very happy. If something happens to Chu Yang, I will make you feel that it is worth it every day. I will be so happy every day." Meng Chao Ran stood up from his body and said casually, "Youngest, not only Chu Yang, but also you and I, in this big whirlpool, no one can guarantee that they will survive. This is the fate of our Beyond the Heavens sect." Wu Yunliang stood up with difficulty. Once he moved, his whole body made cracking sounds. He could not help but take 2 deep breaths. He could not help but complain, "You motherfucker, you are really not showing any mercy." Meng Chao Ran snorted and turned his head away. Looking at the green jade door, his expression was heavy and concerned. His expression was heavy and restrained, and his gaze was extremely complicated. Chu Yang walked forward. On both sides of the stone walls, there were many pearls emitting a misty light. In this underground place, it was like a dream. The calamity sword in his dantian was beating more and more fiercely, as if it was reuniting with a loved one. The second green jade door opened. The cold air was even heavier. If an ordinary person came here, they would have to circulate their martial energy to resist the cold air. However, Chu Yang did not feel uncomfortable. Instead, from head to toe, he felt extremely comfortable. Chu Yang's heart was like a boulder. His feet did not stop moving. The third green jade door. The fourth. Every step Chu Yang took was the same size. His breathing was calm. This showed that his mind was always as calm as ice. He was not disturbed by the calamity sword, which was known as the #1 opportunity in the world. The fifth green jade door opened. The sixth. Chu Yang's eyes did not change. His consciousness suddenly let out a sigh. The empty voice suddenly appeared and sighed faintly, "This kind of mind is indeed worthy of the calamity sword. It seems that the hardships and killings in your previous life have turned you from a stubborn rock into a spiritual and clear jade." Chu Yang did not stop moving. However, his consciousness asked calmly, "Who are you? Are you a human or a ghost?" It was this voice. Ever since it arrogantly said the words, "The heavens can be defied," it did not speak again. No matter how Chu Yang called, it did not come out. Today, under such circumstances, he had actually appeared without a trace. However, the voice disappeared without a trace after Chu Yang asked this question. He didn't answer Chu Yang's question for a long time. It was only when Chu Yang pushed open the green jade door that a tired voice rang out, "I'm very weak right now. Every word I say will cause too much damage. Chu Yang, quickly upgrade to the second fragment of the calamity sword." The second fragment? Yes, the second fragment. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth, natural treasures, rare forging materials. The most important thing is the calamity sword. These can restore my vitality. The voice became softer and softer. It was as if it would disappear at any time. "Help me. I can help you reverse this fate." The voice disappeared. It seemed to have used up the last of its energy. Chu Yang was already standing in the innermost part of the green jade door. It was empty inside, but waves of cold air, which seemed to be able to freeze people into popsicles and shatter them into pieces, rushed in from all directions. Chu Yang's body was soon covered with a layer of white frost. The calamity sword in his dantian started to move intensely. The cold air, which was as boundless as the tide, rushed into Chu Yang's body. It entered his meridians and flowed into the calamity sword. For a full 4 hours, Chu Yang couldn't move at all. The cold air surged violently into his body. After 4 hours, the cold air finally weakened. Chu Yang felt that his body had regained the ability to move. He carefully observed his surroundings. Chu Yang took a step to the left. His dantian jumped. It seemed to be stopping him from moving forward. It was still stopping him. Walking to the right, the calamity sword let out a burst of joy. After 7 or 8 steps, he walked to the stone wall. The calamity sword fell silent. It was an extremely excited silence. It was here. Chapter 41. Chu Yang looked at the stone wall and frowned. How do I dig out the sword tip? It's buried deep in the ground. At this moment, the calamity sword in his dantian suddenly sent out a strong summoning thought. This summoning thought almost made Chu Yang's heart jump out of his throat. He gritted his teeth. Even if he couldn't do it, he had to do it. With a flip of his hand, Chu Yang pulled out the long sword with a swoosh. As he circulated his martial energy, the cold energy that had been swallowed by the tribulation sword in his dantian suddenly surged out spontaneously and poured into the long sword. The ordinary steel long sword suddenly became crystal clear and emitted thousands of blazing cold lights. It directly reflected the rock cave, revealing every detail. Chu Yang shook his hand and tried to stab the sword tip into the bottom of the stone wall. He wanted to test the hardness of the wall before making a decision. But he never expected that when the sword went down, it was like stabbing into a piece of tofu. With a swoosh, the sword went all the way to the hilt. Chu Yang was overjoyed. Why is it so soft? He tried to pinch the stone wall with his hand, but it didn't move at all. His fingers hurt from the pinch. He suddenly realized that only this strange cold energy was the nemesis of this stone wall. The cold energy filled the long sword. Chu Yang slanted the sword and the edge of the blade inwards. With a bit of force, the long sword drew a deep mark on the stone wall. It was at least 3 feet long. Then, with 3 swoosh 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 swoosh, he drew out a rectangle. He threw the long sword away and placed his palms on the rectangle that he drew out like a piece of tofu. He sucked hard. With a pop, a piece of rock that weighed hundreds of kilograms fell to the ground. Chu Yang didn't have time to rest. He started again. One by one, the square stones were dug out from the stone wall and stacked neatly on the ground. In a short time, he was already sweating profusely. On the ground, there were close to 100 pieces of stones of the same size. The long sword was inserted again. Suddenly, there was a clang. In his dantian, the calamity sword suddenly flew up and circled rapidly in his dantian. Its excitement couldn't be contained. The sword tip. When the last big stone was dug out, Chu Yang's eyes narrowed. Under this stone, a shiny sword tip lay there quietly. It was as long as a palm, and its tip was sharp. White light was faintly discernible on both sides, but it seemed to be shrouded in a layer of pink. This was the unique bloody light of a treasured blade that had killed countless people. A tyrannical aura emanated from the tip of the sword. There was no protective packaging. This sword tip had been here for who knew how many years. However, it was still flickering with a cold light. Furthermore, it was surrounded by a faint halo. Chu Yang felt that his lips were a little dry, and his heart was beating like a drum. He forced himself to calm down. Then, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the sword point. Chu Yang frowned as soon as he held the sword tip in his hand. Then, he started to sweat profusely. This sword tip had been buried for so many years. It didn't seem to have any temperature. But when he held it in his hand, he realized that it was burning hot. The moment it came into contact with Chu Yang's body that was full of cold energy, the cold and heat stimulated each other. With a bang, a thick fog rose up in the stone chamber. Moreover, a ferocious aura suddenly broke out. The tip of the sword gently trembled in Chu Yang's hand. It seemed as if it was about to cut off his palm and fly away. Chu Yang tried his best to circulate his martial power and resist with all his might. He was extremely puzzled. When he obtained the Tribulation Sword point in his previous life, such a strange situation didn't occur. Why was everything different now that he had been reborn? The sword tip's struggle grew stronger and stronger. Chu Yang was already somewhat powerless to control it. Finally, the sword tip jumped. Chu Yang frowned. A deep blood groove had already appeared in his palm. The sword tip was about to fly away. If it flew away, he might not be able to find it again in this life. At this moment, a burst of anger suddenly rushed out of his dantian. The Tribulation Sword spirit rushed out like lightning. It rushed out of his dantian and rushed into his meridians. The next moment, it had already rushed to his palm. Then, a strange force entered the Tribulation Sword point from Chu Yang's palm. The sword tip, which was struggling to fly away, suddenly calmed down after coming into contact with this force. The cold aura on Chu Yang's body suddenly disappeared, and the hot aura also disappeared in an instant. The tip of the Calamity Sword in his hand shone brightly, and a blood-red ray of light shot straight up. Then, it disappeared with a swoosh. Then Chu Yang felt that the sword tip suddenly became docile. The next moment, something even stranger happened. The shining sword tip suddenly and strangely disappeared from Chu Yang's palm. In Chu Yang's dantian, the illusory Tribulation Sword trembled excitedly. The sword tip suddenly became solid. The sword tip returned to its original position. The next moment, a vast and boundless concept rose in Chu Yang's heart. It was as if someone was chanting, "A ray of cold light pierces 10,000 fathoms. What harm is there in slaughtering the world? A sharp will buried deep does not change. Gather the wind and clouds to become the emperor." Then, a chant suddenly appeared in Chu Yang's heart, along with some messy postures. Chu Yang's heart shook. His mind sank into the realm of consciousness and looked carefully. He suddenly realized that this was the chant of the Tribulation Heavenly Divine Technique that he had memorized by heart. A strange force shot out from the Tribulation Sword point in his dantian and merged into Chu Yang's limbs and bones. Unknowingly, Chu Yang's cultivation suddenly took a big step forward. He had just broken through to the martial warrior level, but he suddenly rose to the martial warrior level. Moreover, he stopped at the peak. He vaguely had the momentum to continue breaking through, but he stopped at the peak and did not move. At the same time, in the realm of consciousness, a figure wearing a feathered robe and a high crown held a sword in his hand and slowly displayed the sword's power. Every movement was executed smoothly like moving clouds and flowing water. Chu Yang's soul was intoxicated watching. He already knew about these sword moves in his previous life, but he did not know why he could not understand their true essence. But now, looking at it, it seemed that there was a mysterious force helping him. He finally understood its mystery. In his previous life, he also obtained the power and chant from the sword tip. It was no different from the current situation. However, the feeling he got in this life was different from the previous one. In his previous life, he felt that there was a barrier. No matter what, he could not fully understand it. It was like there was a thin layer of window paper that could not be pierced through even with all of Nyo Eru's strength. But now, he had mastered everything through a comprehensive study. Every detail, every tiny change, was like a clear stream that flowed slowly in the bottom of his heart. Every single detail could be seen clearly. This was the recognition of the Tribulation Sword. The privilege of the Tribulation Sword Master. Chu Yang closed his eyes and immersed himself in this strange realm. What he didn't know was that the moment the tip of the Calamity Sword entered his dantian, which was the moment when the 4 lines of the poem suddenly appeared, a colorless and odorless light shot up to the sky from the gathering clouds peak of beyond the heavens sect and exploded. The entire sky of lower 3 heavens was suddenly filled with dark clouds from all directions. In just a moment, the entire sky was covered. The continent suddenly fell into darkness. It was so dark that one could not even see their own fingers. It was now morning. There were still more than 2 hours before noon. At this time, the sky was actually dark. The entire continent was in a panic. Great Zhao Empire, Prime Minister's Manor. From the outside, this Prime Minister's manor was an extremely ordinary official's manor. It did not occupy a particularly large area. Moreover, from the outside, it did not look luxurious. The guards did not seem to be strict at all. However, this was the residence of the ambitious and ruthless Wuxia Rou. When the sky darkened, there was a commotion all around. However, the Prime Minister's manor was completely silent. There was not the slightest bit of chaos. Immediately, in the shortest amount of time, the entire Prime Minister's manor was brightly lit. It was in the morning, and the phenomenon in the sky had happened without warning, but the people here seemed to have been prepared for it in an orderly manner. The lights were turned on. In the study, a 30-year-old scholar was sitting upright. He was dressed in plain and elegant clothes. His face was refined and his eyes were deep like rivers flowing into the sea. It was as if everything in the world was under the gaze of these eyes. Nothing was missed. When the darkness came, he seemed to have a premonition. He stood in front of the window and looked up at the sky silently. Chapter 42. The sky suddenly darkened, but he still stood motionless in front of the window with his hands clasped behind his back. It wasn't until someone tiptoed in and lit the candles that the mansion's lights were lit that he frowned slightly and returned to sit in front of his desk. His eyes gazed into the void as if he was thinking about something. Prime Minister, official Dong requests an audience. An old man in green silently appeared and respectfully reported. Dong Wufa? Let him in. This person was the most powerful prime minister in Great Zhao, Wuxia Rou. Soon, a thin and tall person came in. Prime Minister is well. So, Wuxia Rou waved his hand and looked at the flickering candlelight on the table. He quietly said, Official Dong, what is the matter? I came because of the heavenly vision. Dong Wufa's body was tall. His hands were like palm leaf fans. His face was thin and his cheekbones were protruding. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. Anyone who saw his eyes would immediately think of the savage scavenging vultures in the desert. This person was the #1 general of the Great Zhao Emperor's army. Dong Wufa's arrival here meant that the leaders of Great Zhao's government were all present. Normally, the leaders of both the military and the government were like fire and water, but here, it was the exact opposite. Dong Wufa was older than Wuxia Rou, but Wuxia Rou was the person Dong Wufa admired the most in his life. Heavenly vision? Yes, it is indeed a heavenly vision. Wuxia Rou's thin face revealed a trace of worry as he spoke softly. After he finished speaking, he lowered his gaze as if he was thinking hard about something. His fingers lightly tapped on the table, making a soft sound. The study room fell into silence. Dong Wufa sat straight across from Wuxia Rou, not daring to disturb his thoughts. After a while, the dark clouds in the sky gradually dispersed and the sky became clear again. Wuxia Rou stood up with his hands behind his back and slowly walked to the window. He looked up and muttered, "Half an hour." From the moment the dark clouds came, the sky and earth were covered, until now the clouds have dispersed. Half an hour has passed. This kind of strange phenomenon is rarely seen. Prime Minister, is something important about to happen? Dong Wufa's face changed. Wuxia Rou raised his head to look at the sky. A look of shock flashed across his eyes. Dong Wufa was behind him, but he did not see it. In the blink of an eye, he had regained his composure. He slowly turned around and said with a smile, "There's no other reason." For some unknown reason, heaven and earth suddenly became chaotic and the mysteries of heaven became chaotic. It's already unpredictable. The future is impossible to predict. Even with the Prime Minister's heaven-defying observation of the stars, you are still unable to predict the future? Dong Wufa suddenly stood up, his eyes filled with anxiety. No matter what, my Great Zhao's momentum of unifying the world is already very clear. Wuxia Rou's voice was soft, but it was resolute and decisive. He spoke with great confidence. Everything will proceed according to the original plan. He paused for a moment, and then added, "Speed up." Diwu Qingrou's words were very normal, but his resolute tone made Dong Wufa feel relieved. It seemed that as long as Diwu Qingrou's words were here, even if the entire sky collapsed, it wouldn't matter. "Go." Diwu Qingrou smiled warmly. "Yes, then I'm leaving." Dong Wufa stood up, turned around, and strode out. Watching his back disappear, Diwu Qingrou's smiling eyes suddenly became puzzled and puzzled. He muttered, "How could this be?" The momentum of the sun had already formed. Why did heaven and earth reverse at this moment, and the opponent actually showed a trace of vitality? He slowly paced back and forth. After a while, his left hand slowly clenched into a fist and placed it in front of his chest. His eyes gradually became fierce. "It's just a candle in the wind. One breath can extinguish it. How could I, Diwu Qingrou, let you form a prairie fire?" His eyes narrowed as if he had made up his mind. He raised his eyebrows and shouted, "Guards!" These two short words were unexpectedly filled with murderous intent. In Iron Cloud Nation, Tai Budian, who was known as the pride of the generation, was also looking at the sky with rapt attention. Her gentle face was full of seriousness that did not match her age. "Chaos, everything is in chaos," Tai Bu Tian muttered to himself. He shook his head and laughed involuntarily. "This is a game of chess." "Diwu Qingrou, oh Diwu Qingrou, are you still so confident?" As he said this, Tai Bu Tian's face, which had always been heavy and faintly worried, suddenly showed a trace of playfulness. His eyebrows curved, and for a moment he actually looked somewhat charming. Not only the lower three heavens, but even the skies of the upper three heavens and the upper three heavens had become as dark as ink at this moment. In some ancient places that only belonged to legends, there were also signs of restlessness. On the wild ice field, as the sky suddenly turned dark, that kind of huge energy poured into the sky, stirring up the clouds in the sky. A huge iceberg suddenly burst open, and a black shadow shot straight into the sky. He looked around and confirmed that this aura definitely existed. Then he suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. "The day of our 3 stars divine clan's reappearance has finally arrived." He shouted wildly, and suddenly knelt down heavily on the iceberg. He looked up, and his face was already full of tears. "Tribulation, heaven-defying, the rising sun, the rise of the divine clan. Heaven, oh heaven, this oath has troubled us for tens of thousands of years. Tens of thousands of years." In the mournful cold wind, his voice spread far and wide, and reverberated for a long time in the empty space between heaven and earth. That kind of ancient desolation and the joy of relief was so clear. "Children, let's turn this heavens upside down again. Ha!" This black shadow roared loudly, and it was like thunder in the sky. A burst of cheers sounded from all directions. At the same time, the few big clans that dominated the upper 3 heavens and the lower 3 heavens also held secret meetings. There was only one topic in the meeting. It was shockingly similar. Heaven is about to change. The younger generation of our big clans should also take advantage of this time to go out and gain experience. Otherwise, our clans will fall in this great change. Tribulation comes, wind and clouds dance. 10,000 tribulations are destroyed, and the stars cry. Heaven and earth change, and the path of destiny. This is heaven's will. The outstanding young brothers of our clans will immediately enter the world. In this Jianghu area, you must suppress the descendants of the other clans. No matter what you do, you must suppress them. This must be firmly remembered. Heaven and earth change greatly, and the fate of this moment will affect the rise and fall of our big clans. And you, the younger generation, represent where our fate lies. This was something that every clan's leader would tell their juniors with great care. Naturally, there was also the most important sentence, and it was also a sentence that every young man could recite by the ear. "Find the master of the tribulation sword, and if you can become friends, then help him with all your strength. If you are an enemy, then destroy him at all costs." Heaven and earth shook, and almost all the decisions were made in a short hour. Chu Yang was still underground, and he did not know that because of the birth of the Tribulation Sword, the entire world had changed. He definitely did not know that because of this incident, the life trajectory of those who would shake the world in the future would be changed. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.